Chapter 213. Taking a deep breath, Han Shuo forcibly suppressed his raging bloodlust. The urge to go on a killing spree slowly subsided as he took a few deep breaths. In the eyes of Trunks and the others, as Han Shuo took a few deep breaths, his originally callous and bloodthirsty appearance, specks of bloody light, and ferocious killing intent slowly disappeared without a trace. In the end, he once again returned to the appearance they were familiar with. "What's wrong with you?" Emily let out a sigh of relief when she saw that Han Shuo had returned to normal. Her beautiful eyes focused on Han Shuo with worry as she asked hastily, "My martial arts technique has just reached an unfamiliar realm. It's the hardest to control one's mental state in this realm. I'm not familiar with this new realm yet, so I lost my composure a bit." Han Shuo's expression returned to normal as he revealed a faint smile and explained to everyone, "You gave me a fright. Your expression and aura just now were extremely evil and terrifying. It made my heart tremble just looking at you." Trunks looked deeply at Han Shuo and said with lingering fear. The little skeleton was the only one who didn't show any signs of abnormality. When he saw Han Shuo appear, the little skeleton waved his arms and legs in joy, gesticulating something. From time to time, he would point at the corpses all over the ground, as if telling Han Shuo about his accomplishments. Chuckling in relief, Han Shuo could feel Little Skull's desire to show off, as if waiting for Han Shuo's praise. "Come here, stinking brat. Not bad." He waved his hand and waited for the little skeleton to obediently walk towards Han Shuo with the bone dagger in hand. Han Shuo reached out and rubbed the little skeleton's smooth, jade-like skull. The little skeleton's purple left eye swiveled about as he smacked his white jaw repeatedly. He appeared to be very satisfied. "Honored Master, you're so biased. You've never treated me so kindly before." Gilbert complained when he saw Han Shuo spoiling Little Skull so much. Little Skull had been by Han Shuo's side ever since he was still an errand boy. In the beginning, he'd just been throwing away junk and helping Han Shuo with some trivial matters. As Little Skull grew stronger, he'd helped Han Shuo deal with a few crises. This kind of relationship wasn't something that Gilbert could compare to. Han Shuo glanced at Gilbert and was about to say something when he suddenly creased his brows and cast his gaze towards the door he'd come in from. Loriton of the Cairo mercenary band was like an iron tower as he walked through the door. Harris and a group of experts followed behind him. Loriton had a burly figure, and his weight was probably a bit heavier than a warhorse. His footsteps made dull thumps as he walked. "What's going on? Where are the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band?" Loriton yelled out in a voice as loud as a bell. Pointing at the corpses all over the ground, Han Shuo smiled. "Aren't they all on the ground?" Loriton's brow furrowed when he heard these words and focused his attention on the ground. He opened his mouth to list the names one by one as if he was reciting his family's treasures: Angelo, Turidge, Gilia. His expression was replaced with astonishment when he heard Loriton's words. When he finally lifted his head to look at Han Shuo, his face was full of shock as he said, "You killed all of them? Perhaps the curse of the evil god may have helped us." Han Shuo smiled mysteriously and shrugged his shoulders as he replied carelessly, "These people are indeed from the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, and some of them are even the core members of the band. I hadn't thought that you would be able to kill so many experts. You've truly helped us greatly." Harris couldn't conceal the excitement on his face when he walked in, and even his voice sounded a bit louder than usual. "Just what's going on?" Loriton was greatly puzzled by Han Shuo's answer and couldn't help but ask, "Loriton, you're late. You only arrived after the battle had ended. It looks like your Cairo mercenary band isn't as fast as we'd imagined." Trunks flicked a glance at Han Shuo and spoke on behalf of Han Shuo. "Trunks, you also know that every place in the Valley of Sunshine needs to be guarded. Our Cairo mercenary band couldn't possibly have stationed most of our men here just for this place," Loriton said, and then snorted coldly with an annoyed expression. "Florida is too arrogant. How dare he ignore our existence? Those who ambushed you didn't even bother to hide their faces. It's obvious that they don't care about us at all. Chief Loriton, I hope you'll be a bit more timely next time. The matters here have already concluded, and there's likely nothing else worth your attention." Han Shuo suddenly thought of something after saying this and looked at Loritan with a frown. There's a great swordmaster called Gabriel amongst those who ambushed us this time. He's one of Asher's men, the chief of the Griffin Legion in nearby Valen City. I don't know if the Cairo mercenary band is connected to Asher. I hope you'll pay attention. Great swordmaster Gabriel. Loritan cried out in surprise. He obviously didn't know of this matter, and his expression was a bit grave. Nodding, Han Shuo said, "Correct. This person is the master of Asher's eldest son, Clark. He's always been by Asher's side. I hadn't thought that he'd leave Asher this time and mix with the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. Don't worry, I'll investigate all of this. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll be leaving first." Loritan's face darkened, and he seemed to be thinking about something as he said a bit anxiously, "Wait, I've left the Valley of Sunshine for too long and don't know much about Florida's strength. It's best if you can give us detailed information on the experts and strength of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band." A thunder archmage and a female archer with amazing archery appeared today. One of our companions was almost injured by the female archer this time. We need detailed information on the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. Trunks hastily spoke up when he saw that Loritan was about to leave. "Female archer." Loritan cried out once again and then said gravely, "Then it must be the female elf Maxine. She's a divine archer proficient in water, thunder, and wind magic. She can fuse all three elements into her archery and shoot arrows with terrifying power. This woman is very difficult to deal with. It's said that she's a fiancée that Florida's grandfather found for him. Her origins are very mysterious, and she doesn't seem to have a harmonious relationship with Florida. She hasn't spent much time in the Valley of Sunshine in the past few years, but she'll still lend a hand whenever the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band is in danger. It looks like she's back." "Who's that thunder archmage?" It was Emily's turn to ask this time. "He's called Asa and joined the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band half a year ago. I'm not too sure of his origins, but he's vicious and merciless. He gets along well with Florida. He's taken care of some of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band's shady dealings in the past half a year. He's deeply trusted and thought highly of by Florida." Loritan seemed to be quite familiar with the experts of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. He didn't hesitate at all when faced with Trunks and Emily's questions and explained in great detail. "Apart from these two, what other experts have joined the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band in the past few years?" Trunks continued to ask. Loritan furrowed his brow and mused for a moment. He turned his head to look at Harris and said, "Give them a copy of the information we've gathered." Harris started and then nodded. He took out a scroll from his space ring and handed it to Trunks. "There's some information on the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band here. It should be more detailed than what Miss Emily knows." It looked like Harris and the others already knew Emily's identity. Tanai was the true ruler of the Valley of Sunshine, and the identities of some people couldn't be hidden from them. Trunks glanced at the scroll and nodded at Han Shuo. He then smiled at Loritan. "It's very detailed. We'll help you take care of Florida before the Great War." "If that's really the case, I'll be very grateful to you. Not only will I give this shop to you unconditionally, but Miss Phoebe's merchant guild will also be exempt from all taxes in Tanai." Loritan laughed heartily and turned to walk outside with large strides. Behind him, Harris looked at Trunks and reminded, "The back of the scroll is a map of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band's residence. There are detailed notes on the hidden and open sentries. Destroy this scroll after you've seen it. Don't let it fall into the hands of others, lest it cause unnecessary trouble." Nodding in understanding, Trunks smiled coldly. "Don't worry, I know what to do." Harris and Trunks had known each other for a long time and naturally knew of the irreconcilable hatred between Trunks and Florida. He finally said, "Good luck." After Loritan and the others left the shop, Han Shuo said lowly, "Loritan has a good plan, but we can't follow his plans if we want to gain a foothold in the Valley of Sunshine. Tanai doesn't just have the Cairo mercenary band and the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. I know that there are a few other powers that aren't small either. I think they want to replace the Cairo mercenary band's position and take control of the Valley of Sunshine." Trunks started and then asked Han Shuo, "What do you want to do?" Chuckling darkly, Han Shuo looked up at the sky and murmured to himself, It's a dark and windy night today. The Valley of Sunshine has already been in chaos for a while. I'll make use of this opportunity to make it even more chaotic. Chapter 2:14. Inglorious Tanai. Apart from the strongest Cairo mercenary band and the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, there were also the slightly weaker House of Minlo and the Catarorc tribe. It was said that the House of Minlo was originally a great noble of a small country. They had their own private army and wanted to rebel against the small country, but failed in the end when their plans were exposed. After the battle with the royal army of the small country, the House of Minlo threw away their armor and fled. With their strength greatly reduced, they finally arrived at the Valley of Sunshine. When they arrived at the Valley of Sunshine, they only had 300 soldiers. However, during the chaos of war, the House of Minlo had looted a large amount of wealth from the nobles of that small country. When they arrived at the Valley of Sunshine, they used this fortune to recruit over 1,000 experts of various professions in a few short years. Their strength was only second to the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. The House of Minlo was currently the wealthiest power in the Valley of Sunshine. Patriarch Sawyer Minlo had always wanted to control the Valley of Sunshine, recruit more soldiers, and kill his way back to his homeland to obtain all the power in that country. The Catarorc tribe was a small tribe of orcs. They had originally lived in the bitterly cold lands, but after many hardships, they had migrated to the Valley of Sunshine and lived in a mountain range near the Valley of Sunshine. There were only 500 to 600 orcs in this tribe, but each of them was a warrior that was extremely difficult to deal with. The orcs of the Catar tribe mainly earned enough commission by protecting orc merchants. It was said that the money they earned was all used to support their wives, children, and elders back home. This power wasn't too big or too small, but the current chief of the Catar tribe had always wanted to enter the Valley of Sunshine and obtain more benefits and gold coins by controlling the Valley of Sunshine. The Cairo mercenary band, the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band, the House of Minlo, and the Catar tribe were currently the 4 strongest powers in the Valley of Sunshine. Among them, the Cairo mercenary band was the strongest, with over 2,600 mercenaries proficient in battle. The Rainbow Sickle mercenary band was second, but they also had around 2,000 mercenaries. Then came the House of Minlo's 1,500 soldiers, and finally the Catar tribe's 500 to 600 orc warriors. Out of the 4 powers, only the Cairo mercenary band that controlled the Valley of Sunshine was able to gather all of their troops in Tanai. The other 3 powers had only set up a base in Tanai, with all of their troops stationed in the mountain ranges around the Valley of Sunshine. This information wasn't difficult to obtain. Han Shuo had learned everything from Emily not long after he'd arrived in the Valley of Sunshine. It was clear to everyone that the 4 powers didn't get along with each other. Each power wanted to occupy the Valley of Sunshine and use its enormous resources to quickly increase their own strength in order to obtain greater benefits. The Cairo mercenary band, which originally only had 1,000 people, had more than doubled their numbers in the short span of a few years after they'd taken control of the Valley of Sunshine. This was all because they'd obtained a large sum of gold coins after taking control of the Valley of Sunshine and attracted even more experts to join them. To the Cairo mercenary band, it was an excellent idea to greatly reduce the strength of the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band without harming their own strength. Comparing a mere shop to the Valley of Sunshine, this deal was a huge profit no matter how one looked at it. It was because he understood the situation in the Valley of Sunshine that Han Shuo's heart was filled with ambition. That was why he'd started to think for himself and for the mercenary band that he'd just established. Trunks, take your old comrades and make a trip to the House of Minlo. Cover your faces and stir up some trouble tonight. Kill a few people and set a few fires. Han Shuo looked at Trunks and said with a smile, "You're saying to make the House of Minlo think that another power did it?" Trunks' expression changed as he asked, "They definitely won't suspect us if the House of Minlo is attacked because we don't have the strength to do so. There's no need to make them our enemy. They'll definitely suspect the other 3 powers in the end." Han Shuo explained. Trunks nodded, and a trace of a sinister smile hung on his face. "I think I'm up to the task. I've long since gotten used to the open and veiled struggles among these powers when I was in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band. All right then, be careful. As long as you don't expose your identities, do your best to wreak havoc." Han Shuo chuckled. Trunks didn't say anything else and hurriedly left under the cover of the night. It looked like he was planning on making a move tonight. After Trunks left, Han Shuo said darkly to Emily and the others, "Since the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band has already made a move against us, we can't let them look down on us, can we? Come, let's take a stroll around as well. We'll go to the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band and kill a few people for fun." Now that Han Shuo's group had a good relationship with the Cairo Mercenary Band, it was very convenient for them to enter and exit the Valley of Sunshine. However, Han Shuo's group didn't leave through the main gates of the Valley of Sunshine this time. Instead, they used Gilbert's ability to fly after transforming into a dragon to fly out of a secluded area in the Valley of Sunshine. The Valley of Sunshine had its own rules. Under normal circumstances, even archmages who could fly couldn't use the levitation spell to enter and exit the Valley of Sunshine. If they were discovered by the Cairo Mercenary Band, they would be detained and interrogated. The moonlight was like water as it sprinkled down on the vast expanse of white. The accumulated snow hadn't melted yet, and the snow-covered mountains and towering ancient trees displayed a different kind of beauty under the moonlight. The Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band was located in a small mountain valley to the east of the Valley of Sunshine. Han Shuo and the others, who were riding on Gilbert, could see Tanai on the small mountain in the distance. There were rows of short houses built with red tiles. There was a medium-sized hot spring in the center of the small mountain valley. Steaming hot mist floated above the water, enveloping the small mountain valley in a white mist. There were many fresh flowers and plants planted around the hot spring. Because it was close to the hot spring, the surrounding plants weren't affected by the cold winter and actually bloomed with many beautiful flowers. Strong and sturdy mercenaries were scattered around the small valley, looking around cautiously. They were always on the lookout for an enemy invasion. On a cliff above the mountain valley, Han Shuo had Gilbert stop. Han Shuo smiled coldly as he looked at the small mountain valley below. Perhaps someone will make a move earlier this time. Phoebe and Emily both revealed puzzled expressions when they heard these words. They looked at Han Shuo in confusion, and it was Phoebe who asked, "What's going on?" Dark Grand Magus Edwin and that female alchemist Belinda of the Calamity Church were watching from a distance when I was in the shop. Before I stopped my cultivation, I sensed their location. When Andy and his companion left, they chased after Andy. Edwin and Belinda followed behind Andy first, and then Gabriel and the female archer Maxine. Edwin and Belinda should be in the mountain valley below now. If they've come to kill Florida, then they've helped us greatly. Han Shuo responded slowly as he looked at the mountain valley below. Then what should we do now? She didn't know when it had started, but with Han Shuo around, Emily had gotten used to letting Han Shuo decide everything. Lifting his head to look at the sky, Han Shuo said, "Only half of the long night has passed. We still have a lot of time, so why don't we wait for a while?" Time flew by, and after roughly half an hour, intense magical pulses suddenly emanated from the grandest red-tiled house in the center of the small mountain valley below. Under the cool moonlight, an armored puppet beast that looked like a three-eyed evil god suddenly appeared out of thin air. It was made of black iron armor. The golem's enormous body charged straight for the magnificent building as soon as it appeared, and a thick iron tail swept out, sending the red-tiled house's tiles flying and rumbling. At the same time, an earth-shattering rumble came from the place where the strong magical wave was. 3 hands of death appeared out of thin air and floated into the magnificent building through the window, wantonly destroying everything inside. Edwin and the others have made their move. We can't just sit around either. Han Shuo chuckled coldly as the murderous aura around him grew thicker. The evil and merciless expression from before once again appeared on his face. "Honorable Master, what should I do?" Gilbert was excited once again. His dragon-shaped voice was loud and resonant. "Carry the 2 of them and fly above the valley. Do your best to destroy all the buildings in the valley and spit out all the poison and flames. Immediately fly away from the Valley of Sunshine if you encounter any attacks that might harm you. Don't wait for me. No one can stop me if I want to leave." Han Shuo's expression was cold and savage as he laughed wildly and dove down like a hawk. A bloody light flickered from his body as his eyes turned blood red. "He'll be fine, right?" When Han Shuo had flown down, Phoebe had already discovered Han Shuo's strangeness and couldn't help but ask Emily. "Do as he says." Emily responded and stomped her foot, urging Gilbert, "Dark Dragon, what are you waiting for?" A small, skinny figure followed Han Shuo at this moment and floated down through the air. The little skeleton flailed his arms and legs as he flew down, like a kite with a broken string. However, the 7-bone spurs on his back swayed back and forth midway, stabilizing his swaying body. He followed closely behind Han Shuo in a strange trajectory as he descended into the mountain valley. Chapter 215. In the bloodthirsty realm, demonic cultivators were extremely easily angered and irritable. Only in the midst of bloodthirsty slaughter could one comprehend the mysteries of this realm. Only in the midst of bloodthirsty slaughter could a demonic cultivator clearly understand themselves. If one wanted to break through this realm, endless slaughter was the fastest way. However, it was extremely easy for demonic practitioners to go berserk in the midst of slaughter. If one wasn't careful and lost control of their mind, it would be difficult to recover, and they would completely devolve into a lunatic monster that only had the instinct to kill. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to control oneself in this realm. Slaughter was the fastest way to break through, but it could also be a path of no return. When Han Shuo had flown down from the cliff, his hatred towards Florida had increased immeasurably, including the female archer called Maxine, who had almost dealt a fatal blow to Emily. His heart, which had calmed down, now beat much faster than usual. His magical yuan was abundant, and the demon infant was filled with a surging vitality. After the demon infant had absorbed the pure power of the soul contained within the purple demon eye, Han Shuo's stagnant true demon realm had broken through. Although Han Shuo had thoughts of going on a killing spree from time to time after reaching the bloodlust realm, his strength had indeed increased by leaps and bounds. Now, even if Florida was at his peak, Han Shuo still had the confidence to kill him head-on. Even if he didn't make use of the speed of the art of the demonic ninth heavens, Han Shuo was confident that he could fight Edwin and escape unscathed. A murderous aura appeared in the form of a dense black mist, curling around Han Shuo's body. The swooping Han Shuo looked like a black cloud from afar as he dove down. There were 2 blood-red eyes within the cloud, and the eerie, sinister light within was enough to make one's heart tremble. At this moment, Tanai Mountain had long since fallen into chaos due to Edwin and Belinda's actions. Edwin and Belinda had joined hands and were dealing a destructive blow to the magnificent building, seeming to want to raze it to the ground. From Harris's scroll, Han Shuo knew that the magnificent building was where Florida of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band lived. It looked like Edwin's trip to the Cairo Mercenary Band had been fruitful. Without Loriton's help, the two who just arrived in the Valley of Sunshine wouldn't have been so familiar with the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band's setup. Amidst the deafening rumbling sounds, a pitch-black shadow descended from the sky. A baleful aura was so dense that no one dared to ignore it. The experts of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band had been frantically gathering their men to deal with Edwin and Selena when they discovered the abnormality in the sky. Arrows, spears, and javelins had already shot into the sky like lightning bolts. However, none of the dozens of attacks that shot towards the Black Shadow could get close to it. The Black Shadow quickly chanted a necromancy spell as it flew down. A black light flashed through the sky as a troop of gargoyles appeared out of thin air. These gargoyles wielded bone spears and lined up neatly in front of the Black Shadow. They tightly blocked the arrows, spears, and javelins. Suddenly, a huge, jet-black sky curtain rapidly unfolded behind the black figure, blocking the bright moonlight and causing a third of the entire valley to be shrouded in darkness. A thick aura of death suddenly spread out endlessly. Everyone within the aura of death felt that their bodies were a lot more stiff than usual. The Black Shadow landed in the mountain valley under the cover of the black canopy, and dark creatures appeared one after another. The moonlight was covered by the dark blue clouds, making it impossible to judge the time. No one knew how much longer it would be until daybreak. As a lost necromancy spell, the canopy of necromancy had the effect of diminishing the fighting strength of enemies within its range. Within the range of the canopy of necromancy, all dark creatures could obtain more power and possess greater speed and strength through absorbing the thick aura of death around them. This was an evil spell that reduced the opponent's strength and increased the fighting strength of dark creatures. It had been forgotten on the continent after it had disappeared from the cemetery of death. When Han Shua's spell appeared and the dark creatures began to excitedly attack their surroundings, not only did the Rainbow Sickle mercenaries lose their agility, their eyes also felt abnormally dry and their vision was affected. Belinda, which other necromancer has come apart from Clarendon? Edwin had been casting dark magic when he saw that the moonlight had been covered by the dark blue clouds and the dark creatures were excitedly attacking the mercenaries around them. He asked Belinda, who was controlling the golem beside him. Shaking her head, Belinda had a face full of confusion as she responded, "Clarendon has already been taken care of. There shouldn't be any other necromancers apart from him." Edwin started when he heard these words and then smiled faintly. Then perhaps the higher-ups have sent someone else over. Even I've never seen such a mysterious necromancy spell before. I don't think any other necromancer can use it apart from our Calamity Church. Of course, only our Calamity Church would possess such mysterious necromancy magic. He must be one of us. Belinda believed Edwin's words without a shred of doubt. It looked like they had an unreasonable amount of confidence in the Calamity Church's strength. "I'm Edwin. Which old friend has come?" Edwin, who had been casting dark magic, couldn't help but call out in a friendly manner when he saw that some dark creatures were helping the two of them block the mercenaries around them because of Han Shua's appearance. A vast amount of mental strength had been mostly used up because of the canopy of necromancy and the summoning of 50 to 60 dark creatures of different levels. As the 50 to 60 dark creatures wantonly attacked everything within the range of the canopy of necromancy, Han Shua, who'd sunk into a berserk state of bloodlust, became a cruel shadow that wantonly vented his rage. A thirst for blood pushed Han Shua into the midst of endless slaughter like the unending river waters. The mercenaries who weren't strong enough were instantly cut in half by the sharp demon's lair edge wherever the dark shadow passed, fresh blood spurting out. Han Shua's eyes had turned blood red, and he couldn't control his desire to destroy everything. He killed all who stood in his way, like a machine reaping lives. All the mercenaries in the surroundings were met with terrifying attacks one after another. Han Shua's body froze slightly when he heard Edwin's friendly words, but he ignored him. When he looked around, he discovered that there was no one else apart from the little skull following closely behind him. In the bloodlust realm, Han Shua's physical strength had reached the pinnacle. He could instinctively sense the dangers around him amidst the continuous slaughter. He could even clearly sense the fear and trembling of those far away. Every time Han Shua killed a person, the person's fear and resentment at death's door would form a ball of air that was hard to see with the naked eye and be absorbed by the killing intent around Han Shua. As more and more mercenaries were killed by Han Shua, the killing intent around Han Shua's body grew thicker and thicker, to the point that the thick scent of blood emanated from his pores. Han Shua's physical body and magical yuan seemed to be continuously refined in this process. Han Shua could feel that his strength was increasing bit by bit in this process. On the contrary, as his physical body and magical yuan rapidly increased, Han Shua's mind became more and more muddled. When the fear and resentment of those he'd killed were absorbed into his surroundings, the enormous amount of information seemed to affect Han Shua's brain, causing the veins on Han Shua's head to bulge. He felt as if he was about to go berserk. Cursing inwardly, Han Shua immediately understood after obtaining all of Chu Kanglin's memories that in the bloodlust realm, if there were such muddled signs in one's mind, the desire to kill everyone and destroy everything in their surroundings would increase. This was a sign that one was about to go berserk. After experiencing hundreds of times of pain, Han Shua's indomitable willpower had long since been tempered into indomitable willpower. The demon's lair edge was forcibly put away into Han Shua's storage ring. Han Shua took advantage of the fact that he was still conscious to continuously calm his raging heart and immediately sat down cross-legged, ignoring the chaos in his surroundings. Little Skull, who had been following beside Han Shua and helping Han Shua reap lives, suddenly flashed his purple demon eye when he saw Han Shuo suddenly sit down. He waved his hand at the dark creatures in the distance. Like a broken light bulb, the purple demon eye flickered and lit up with an evil purple light. It was as if a mysterious force was driving those dark creatures. When Little Skull waved his hand, the surrounding zombies and hate warriors all walked over in fear and trepidation, as if they were subordinates showing due respect to Little Skull. When facing Han Shuo, because of the summoning incantation, they could only rigidly and instinctively follow Han Shuo's orders. However, when Han Shuo sat down cross-legged and Little Skull summoned them, their expressions were filled with fear and reverence. Each and every one of them carefully surrounded Han Shuo, as if deeply afraid that Little Skull would be dissatisfied and blame them. They were like the most humble servants and slaves. This kind of behavior seemed to indicate that they had long since known of Little Skull, or had heard of Little Skull's tyrannical and miraculous abilities. Otherwise, how could an ordinary Little Skull warrior in this vast and boundless alternate dimension make them treat him with such fear? Perhaps, in another dimension infinitely far away, the Little Skull with 7 bone spurs on his back, a bone dagger in his hand, and a purple demon eye had already established a school of his own and become a famous character. Chapter 216. A third of the mountain valley was covered by the canopy of necromancy. Dark green clouds obscured all light as a thick aura of death wafted in all directions, giving the mercenaries within a strong sense of discomfort. In the center of the canopy of necromancy, Han Shuo, who'd experienced slaughter and found it hard to control his desires, couldn't stop his mind from sinking into a frenzy of slaughter due to the increasingly thick aura of violence in his body. However, his will, which had been tempered for a long time, was able to rein in at the most critical moment, forcefully stopping him from falling any further. Sitting down cross-legged, Han Shuo ignored the chaos around him and focused, slowly pacifying his deepest desires. 3 zombie warriors, 2 hate warriors, and 7 or 8 skeletal warriors stood around Han Shuo. Little Skull wielded a bone dagger as his purple demon eye glowed with purple light. He was like a general leading an army of thousands as he stood in front of Han Shuo with his head held high and chest puffed out, silently protecting Han Shuo. Under the combined efforts of Edwin and Belinda, the grandest building in the mountain valley finally collapsed with a boom. The earth-shattering sound shook the entire mountain valley. In that moment, the mercenaries of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band stationed far away, meditating or tirelessly training their swordplay, all realized that their base was under attack and swarmed towards the mountain valley. In the far distance, a group of knights clad in shining silver armor was charging towards them from atop their silver-armored warhorses. They were holding 3-meter-long javelins in their hands. A slender blue figure nimbly stepped onto the treetops on the snow-covered treetops, belatedly flying over. She wore a loose blue dress with a few fluttering ribbons that covered her face as she moved quickly. Only 2 long pointed ears were visible, revealing her identity as an elf. In another direction, Andy and the Thunder Archmage used the levitation spell under the moonlight to come to the rescue as fast as lightning, unable to disguise the panic on their faces. Who dares cause trouble for the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band? An angry roar shook the skies as the person at the front of the silver-armored knights roared out. Although his head was covered by a silver helmet, his roar still spread throughout the entire mountain valley. The Knights of Light are here. It looks like we should retreat. Belinda looked into the distance and spoke to Edwin beside her. Edwin nodded and was about to reply when he suddenly pointed at the sky in surprise. Who was that? Belinda couldn't help but look up in the direction of Edwin's finger. Although the canopy of necromancy was concealing them, the 2 of them still managed to make out an enormous black figure through the surging flames. It's that person's magical pet, a young black dragon. I didn't think that they'd come here as well. Belinda seemed to recall the humiliation she'd suffered earlier, and her voice was slightly gloomy as she replied, "Hee, that's great. We don't have to leave immediately." If it hadn't been for Gilbert's group, then all of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band's attacks would have been aimed at them. Now that they had Gilbert to divert attention, the 2 of them naturally didn't have to bear all the pressure. In the air above the mountain valley, Gilbert made use of his swift flight, speed to carry Emily and Phoebe on his back as he spat out scorching flames at the buildings below, drowning them in a sea of fire. Green venom sprayed out from some crowded areas, and the mercenaries all howled as they dodged in all directions. If they didn't make it in time and came into contact with even the slightest bit of the venom, they would die in an instant. Lowly life forms, you shouldn't have angered us. This is my, Gilbert's, punishment for your despicable actions. Gilbert's deep voice reverberated through the air above the mountain valley. He was so excited that he was dancing with joy, proud of his astonishing destructive power. Holy power of light, hear my call and dispel all darkness, radiance of light. An ancient and distant chant suddenly rang out in the chaotic mountain valley. All sorts of shouts and attacks were unable to drown out this chant. A strong beam of light tore through the heavens as the divine, holy element of light filled the air above the mountain valley. The dark green clouds created by the canopy of necromancy all disintegrated in an instant, vanishing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Dazzling light sprinkled all over the mountain valley, reflecting the gentle light of the stars. The holy power of light sprinkled down and quickly dispersed the presence of death. All the mercenaries in the mountain valley were no longer affected by it. Of the dark creatures summoned by Han Shuo, apart from the little skull who remained calm and unafraid, the other dark creatures of various ranks had their bodies rapidly corroded in an extremely short period of time. Each and every one of them revealed an expression of extreme agony as they frantically looked for cover to hide. The dark creatures that had originally been ordered by the little skull to protect Han Shuo were also in great pain, but they seemed to be very afraid of the little skull. Although their bodies were rapidly corroding, they didn't dare to leave immediately. Instead, they looked at the little skull with wide eyes, waiting for the little skull's forgiveness. Finally, the little skull waved his hand, and the dark creatures scattered with a crash. Each and every one of them hid under a house or found a random hole to burrow into, trying to avoid the radiance of radiance. As for the injured mercenaries, their injuries miraculously came under control after being illuminated by the radiance of radiance. Their spirits visibly improved, as if they'd been quickly healed. When the element of light filled the mountain valley, the situation was reversed in an instant. A white-haired but spirited old man dressed as a clergyman of the Church of Light surveyed Tanai's surroundings with a bemoaning gaze. He's here all right. I guess that he'd come back after Florida was so heavily injured. Let's go. Florida must have been moved away by him. Otherwise, the building he lives in wouldn't have so little defense. Edwin stood in the shadows of a house and looked viciously at light Archmage Ferguson in the air as he yelled at Belinda. It'll be hard to leave if we're any later. Belinda understood just how strong Ferguson was and didn't hesitate at all. The golem had already turned into a streak of white light as soon as she'd finished speaking, disappearing into her scroll. On the other side, Dark Dragon Gilbert, who had just been shouting loudly, didn't utter a single word when he saw that the old man had turned the situation around with a powerful spell of light the moment he appeared. He quickly flew up into the sky without saying a word. Ferguson frowned at Gilbert's departure and chanted the simplest spell, Radiant Sword Slash. The enormous amount of light surrounding the mountain valley suddenly coalesced into 3 swords of light, shooting towards Gilbert with great speed. He turned around and spat out a stream of flames, stopping the 2 swords of light in their tracks. Emily hastily cast a hand of death to block the other sword of light, and the dragon and 2 women leapt out of the mountain valley, disappearing into the distance. After Ferguson released the lightsaber slash, a fierce light magic shockwave took shape. This magic shockwave took the form of a ring-shaped wave. Wherever it passed, the air would crackle and the ground would crack, leaving deep scratches on it. A building that occupied an area of 50 square meters was instantly crushed into rubble under the bombardment of this shockwave. Stone fragments flew everywhere. Old friend Edwin, I could smell that disgusting scent on you from far away. Come out. Ferguson called out softly in the direction of the attack after casting the blast of light magic. It looked like Gilbert wasn't Ferguson's main target, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to leave so easily. Edwin, who was of the same level and was quite familiar with each other, should be Ferguson's main target. Heh, I'm so happy to see you. But this place isn't suitable for me. Goodbye. Edwin's sinister laughter rang out from within the ruins. A black figure gradually faded away after his voice faded, disappearing from the ruins. I'll find you. Ferguson's face was calm, and he didn't look happy or sad. His voice was also indifferent, devoid of anger or anger. There's another one down there. There's someone who's not afraid of death. Thunder Archmage Asa looked down in surprise and exclaimed. In the middle of a mountain valley filled with rubble, a figure glowing with a bloody light sat there indifferently. He was as steady as a boulder, as if he didn't care about everything that was happening around him. A short little skull with a purple left eye, wielding a bone dagger, 7 spikes on his back, and wielding a bone dagger stood unwaveringly by his side, as if protecting him from danger. It's him. This is the person who almost killed Florida in front of the Valley of Sunshine's fence. Fire Archmage Andy immediately cried out when he looked down. Everyone was shocked when they heard these words. All of them looked at Han Shuo in confusion. They couldn't understand why Han Shuo hadn't left at this time. Could it be that he thought he could take on all the experts of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band by himself? Could it be that he didn't know that there was a Light Grand Magus in the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band? Surround him. I want him alive. There was finally a trace of anger in Ferguson's voice. No one knew if he was angry at Han Shuo for heavily injuring Florida, or at Han Shuo for looking down on all of them. Understood. The Knights of Light immediately surged forward from all directions upon hearing Ferguson's order, surrounding Han Shuo in 3 layers. In the sky were the 2 Archmages Andy and Asa, as well as the Light Grand Magus Ferguson and the female archer Maxine. Only a sacred Magus, a sacred knight, or a sacred swordmaster would be able to leave so easily when surrounded by such a force. Han Shuo obviously wasn't one of these peak existences. As everyone stared at Han Shuo, Light Grand Magus Ferguson's eyes suddenly lit up with an astonishing light. His previously calm face was suddenly filled with a strange expression. His white brow was furrowed tightly, the wrinkles on his forehead twitching as his lips smacked together. His expression was filled with incredulity and shock, as well as a few traces of deep worry and fear. Grandpa Ferguson, what's wrong? The female elven archer Maxine looked oddly at Ferguson from not too far away. Her exquisite and impeccable face was like the most perfect work of art. Maxine's appearance possessed all the advantages that an elven beauty should have. She had a slender and alluring figure, an extraordinary temperament, silky hair that was like a waterfall of oil green, and a breathtakingly beautiful face. All of these perfectly blended together to form a beauty that could topple cities of the elven race. On the other side, Edwin and Belinda stood side by side on a cliff above the valley where Han Shuo and the Dark Dragon had been standing. The expression on the Calamity Church's Dark Grand Magus Edwin's face was astonishingly similar to Ferguson's. A frightening dark light shone from his eyes and focused on the little skull wielding the bone dagger. His expression was one of incredulity and shock, as if he'd found a priceless treasure. His lips trembled uncontrollably. Grandmaster Edwin, what's wrong? Belinda looked at Edwin with a baffled expression and asked the exact same question that Maxine had asked Ferguson. That little skull. He's not afraid of the radiance of light. Ferguson and Edwin exclaimed almost at the same time with different emotions in their hearts. I don't know how this person did it, but he must die now. He can't stay in this world for a second longer. This was the first time in so many years that Ferguson had made up his mind to kill someone. There was an unquestionable resolution in his words. On the other side, Edwin took a deep breath and said with wild joy, he must live no matter what. Light magic has always been the bane of necromancy magic for thousands of years. If the dark creatures of the necromancy magic can be unafraid of light magic, then the Calamity Church will completely reverse the situation. The Church of Light will find it difficult to stop our advance. Belinda immediately came to her senses when she heard these words. Her eyes were also filled with shock and joy. She looked at Edwin and said, "What should we do? We must save him at all costs. He must not die," Edwin said resolutely. He had never wanted to protect someone as much as he did at this moment, Chapter 217. Knights of Light. Kill them immediately. This person and that dark creature cannot be allowed to remain in this world. Ferguson's expression was grave as he called out lowly. The Knights of Light who had just surrounded Han Shuo and had been planning on capturing Han Shuo alive were all a bit surprised when they heard that Ferguson had suddenly changed his mind. However, they only paused for a second and then decided to carry out Ferguson's orders obediently. Edwin didn't hesitate at the top of the cliff at the top of the mountain valley as he flew towards Han Shuo with Belinda. He planned on saving Han Shuo at all costs and finding out the secret behind why dark creatures didn't fear light magic. At this moment, Han Shuo, who had been keeping his eyes closed all this time, suddenly opened his eyes. His cold gaze swept across the surroundings, revealing a strange smile. Han Shuo chanted the simplest necromancy magic, and the little skull that had been guarding him without abandoning him disappeared without a trace under a streak of black light that cut through the sky. "Goodbye, everyone." Han Shuo smiled faintly after the little skull had disappeared. As soon as he'd finished speaking, the murderous bloody light that had been circling around Han Shuo's body suddenly shot into the 9 heavens. A powerful explosion sounded from Han Shuo's direction. Violent explosions rang out one after another with Han Shuo at the center. The earth quaked and the mountains swayed as even the mountain valley trembled. Some of the Knights of Light who had been close to Han Shuo were caught off guard and were blasted into smithereens, blood and flesh flying far away. Edwin and Belinda, who had been rapidly descending, were startled when they saw the sudden commotion below them. Waves of evil blood-red light shot towards them in the sky, accompanied by violent booms. Their downward momentum came to a halt at this moment. Edwin used the levitation spell to grab Belinda and scrambled to avoid the bloodlight that shot into the sky. He then looked down at the violent changes below, his face full of shock and disbelief. When the dust had settled, an enormous hole that was 5 to 6 meters deep and 10 meters wide had appeared where Han Shuo had been sitting. The strong smell of blood, accompanied by the dark red air mass, drifted in all directions. The scorched ground was pitch black, and there were several badly mutilated corpses of the Knights of Light just at the edge of the huge cave. However, Han Shuo, who had been sitting cross-legged here, had disappeared without a trace. No matter how much the crowd gnashed their teeth and searched everywhere, they couldn't find any trace of him. Taking a deep breath, Light Grand Magus Ferguson suppressed his anger and said, "There's no need to look. Although I don't know how he did it, he's already left. Then what do we do next?" Thunder Archmage Asa had been very respectful when facing Ferguson and asked hastily, "I want to know everything about this person, everything. The more detailed, the faster the better." Ferguson's voice held a rare note of anxiety as he turned his head to Asa and urged, "Understood. We'll get to it immediately." Asa responded. The elven sharpshooter Maxine finally understood why Ferguson had lost his composure. The sudden appearance of such a person who could turn the tables on the continent was a nightmarish influence for the Church of Light. Therefore, as an important figure of the Church of Light, Ferguson would certainly make use of all his resources to nip this possibility in the bud. "Good kid. You do have some tricks up your sleeve to be able to escape so miraculously." It was a good thing that Edwin had stopped his descent in time. Otherwise, he might have been caught up in the blast as well. Edwin couldn't help but praise Han Shuo when he saw that Han Shuo had miraculously escaped. "Master Edwin, this person has a grudge against the Calamity Church. Clarendon died at his hands, and even Johnny was killed by him." Belinda couldn't help but remind him when she saw Edwin's attitude take a 180-degree turn. "As long as he's willing to work with us, this kind of grudge is nothing. Everyone has a weakness. No matter what this person needs, we can provide it for him." In addition, Ferguson has already discovered his uniqueness today. The Radiant Church will definitely try to kill him at all costs. Ferguson will help us and get him to cooperate with us. Edwin laughed heartily and grabbed Belinda as they flew higher and higher, gradually leaving the mountain valley. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. There was a deep pond with a thick layer of ice 100 or so miles away from the mountain valley where the Rainbow Sickle mercenaries were. The water in the pond had all been frozen solid in the harsh winter, and the surface of the pond was as smooth as a mirror, shining brightly under the starlight. However, a streak of bloody light streaked through the sky and descended from the heavens, crashing down like a meteor. A violent force suddenly attacked, and the glaring bloody light bombarded the solid ice. A huge explosion came from the solid ice of the deep pool. The originally smooth mirror-like ice layer was suddenly blasted open with a huge hole in the ice. With the hole in the ice as the center, the surrounding ice cracked and melted into the pool of water below. A slender figure suddenly shot out from the hole in the ice in the span of a breath. A dripping wet Han Shuo flew out of the hole and immediately stopped on a piece of ice that hadn't cracked. He immediately sat down cross-legged and continued to adjust his breathing. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Han Shuo opened his eyes and called out softly. Thin threads of dark red air floated out from the pores in his body, gradually dissipating as the cold wind blew past. In the dead of the winter night, Han Shuo stood up from his cross-legged position, changed into a new set of dry clothes, and soared into the sky once more. When he arrived in the boundless night sky, he got his bearings and quickly flew towards the Valley of Sunshine. The Ninefold Demonic Art. With all of Chu Kanglin's memories of demonic arts, Han Shuo could already skillfully use some secret magical arts now that he'd reached the Bloodlust realm. The demonic blood escape art was a type of demonic art for escaping. It originally required one to use one's blood essence to activate it and expend a bit of it to create a series of explosions. Then, the user would use the loud explosions and chaos to teleport their body away from danger. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, demonic cultivators definitely wouldn't use such a technique that consumed a large amount of blood essence. This was because once this technique was used, the caster would definitely suffer a great loss of vitality due to the excessive consumption of blood essence. This would put them in an extremely disadvantageous situation. However, this wasn't the case when he deployed the demonic blood disassembly this time. Having reached the Bloodlust realm, Han Shuo's body had naturally formed a murderous aura after a short period of bloodthirsty slaughter in the valley. He'd absorbed the fear and hatred of the mercenaries who died at his hands and gathered it all into his body. When this force grew stronger and stronger, Han Shuo felt that he was struggling to control his body. This was why he disregarded everything and sat down cross-legged in a dangerous place, immediately recovering his mind. In the process of stabilizing his mind, Han Shuo suddenly woke up and realized that he was surrounded by many experts. At this moment, the negative energy that had been attached to the killing intent on his body was extremely chaotic and difficult to control. In this moment of crisis, Han Shuo suddenly thought of the demonic blood escape art. A thought struck him and he forcefully used this energy as a catalyst, using it as the foundation to execute the demonic blood escape art. Not only did this cause an earth-shattering commotion, a few knights who were caught off guard instantly died tragically. Han Shuo also calmly left the encirclement of the experts. This uncontrollable energy was also released by Han Shuo, not harming him in the slightest. On the way back to the Valley of Sunshine, Han Shuo miraculously discovered that the strength of his body had been tempered once again through this slaughter. Perhaps it was because the demonic blood escape art had used up the chaotic energy, leaving behind a small amount of pure energy that had miraculously fused with his magical yuan. It looks like I'll have to take risks if I want to improve a bit faster. When Han Shuo sensed that his body's condition had changed due to this slaughter, he couldn't help but murmur ruefully. The sound of metal clashing suddenly traveled from not too far away and fell into Han Shuo's ears. Han Shuo, who was flying towards the Valley of Sunshine, started and began to carefully discern the surrounding mountain terrain. Having his brain expanded by magical yuan, Han Shuo had a good understanding of the surrounding mountain terrain from the information Emily had obtained. When he paid close attention to his surroundings, he quickly found out where he was. He even knew where the sound was coming from. The sound of metal clashing came from where the house of Minlo was. Perhaps this matter had something to do with Trunks and the others. It's time to see the strength of those subordinates I've never met before. Han Shuo murmured to himself as he changed his trajectory in the direction of the Valley of Sunshine and flew towards the area where the House of Minlo was. Chapter 218. The House of Minlo was located in a small mountain in the Valley of Sunshine. Many caves had been excavated into the belly of the mountain, intersecting with each other. Many shockingly powerful defensive measures had been set up inside. Han Shuo flew through the air and stopped on top of an ancient tree more than 10 meters tall. His eyes looked towards the source of the noise. Thick smoke billowed out of the caves where the House of Minlo's troops were stationed. Some of the cave's entrances were ablaze. Many stone chambers had been excavated from the caves. The stone chambers were like individual rooms, with all sorts of living facilities within. Many of the stone chambers were even more luxurious than some of the shops in the Valley of Sunshine. It was very normal for a fire dragon to burst into flames as soon as it was thrown in. At the exit of the small mountain, a group of masked people moved quickly. Some of them were fire mages who chanted fire spells from time to time and spat out tongues of flame towards the cave entrance. This group of people moved nimbly and cooperated very well. The fire mages set the fire while the wind mages used the wind to fan the flames. A few archers wielded bows and arrows and forced the House of Minlo's men who had poked their heads out of the cave to go back in. The small mountain covered a large area. After the originally empty belly of the mountain was excavated, many caves and stone chambers of various sizes appeared. This group of troublemakers only targeted one corner of the mountain to destroy. Once people from other places came to help, they immediately retreated and hid in the surrounding bushes to conceal themselves. They were obviously very familiar with the surrounding terrain, and they were very good at changing places after a battle. Once they were discovered, they would immediately retreat while fighting, then make a big circle and come back from another place to wreak havoc for a while. Under normal circumstances, this group of troublemakers with only a few dozen people would very likely be consigned to eternal damnation when the first wave of attacks was discovered and they didn't retreat. However, the House of Minlo's situation was also very chaotic. This group of troublemakers was not the main force this time. A group of 400 to 500 bandits with messy clothing was the main target of the House of Minlo. For some unknown reason, these bandits had gathered around the House of Minlo and attacked any House of Minlo who came out of the cave. Both sides were locked in a fierce battle. Watching from afar for a while, Han Shuo didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw Trunks and his gang taking advantage of the chaotic battle to cause trouble everywhere. He hadn't expected that Trunks would actually have such talent in this area. The mission against the House of Minlo this time was originally just to arouse the House of Minlo's suspicions of the other factions. Who would have thought that the situation would develop like this? This was rather surprising to Han Shuo. Even more people were wearing shining armor and wielding sharp weapons as they returned from a distant path. From their clothing, Han Shuo could clearly tell that this group was also from the House of Minlo. There were about 500 to 600 of them, and each of them had an extraordinary aura. They should be the elite troops of the House of Minlo. The direction in which this group of people were returning was precisely where Trunks and his men were. Seeing that Trunks and his men hadn't discovered any possible danger and were planning on causing more trouble, Han Shuo finally no longer stayed where he was and flew towards them. The sky was already beginning to brighten, and the stars had hidden themselves in the depths of the sky. It looked like it would be dawn soon. Just as Trunks was about to launch one last attack during the chaos, a black shadow landed in front of him with a whoosh. Trunks was startled, but when he realized that it was actually Han Shuo, he immediately let out a sigh of relief and said, "Why are you here? I was passing by here on the way and just happened to see the returning elites of the House of Minlo, so I was planning to come in from here. Let's leave quickly?" Han Shuo smiled faintly and didn't waste any words, explaining the current situation to Trunks. When he heard that the elites of the House of Minlo had returned, Trunks growled lowly and made a gesture towards the mercenaries in the distance. They were all masked fellows. When they saw Trunks' hand signal, they immediately understood. They did not gather together and leave. Instead, they became more and more scattered. Each and every one of them used the terrain to conceal themselves and gradually disappeared without a trace. "Let's go." Trunks didn't remain idle either. He turned his head and smiled at Han Shuo before burrowing into the dense thicket. The thick snow on the towering ancient trees blocked the light from above. It was difficult to walk through the dense thicket, but Trunks' figure wasn't obstructed at all. He led Han Shuo through many winding paths and left the house of Minlo's mountain in half an hour, appearing on the road to the Valley of Sunshine. They're all old mercenaries of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band. When the old chief was still here, everything around the Valley of Sunshine was under our control. We're so familiar with the surrounding terrain that we can walk around with our eyes closed, so you don't have to worry about their safety. Trunks explained to Han Shuo once they left the house of Minlo's mountain. Han Shuo had already observed these people's actions from the high ground just now. They had great teamwork and were quite strong. Most of them had the strength of journeyman swordsmen or knights. There were also a few adept mages and swordsmen among them. There were also many with extraordinary archery skills. It looked like it was indeed as Trunks had said. They really were old mercenaries of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band. With such a group of people, in addition to Trunks' planning and organization, the Soul Destroyer Mercenary Band's future path would be much smoother. Right, what's going on your side? Why did a bandit band come to the house of Minlo? Han Shuo couldn't help but ask as he recalled the situation just now. Trunks couldn't help but laugh at Han Shuo's question. He then explained, when we were heading to the house of Minlo, we coincidentally saw this bandit band planning to rob a group of merchants. Before the battle, we pointed the way for these merchants and they followed our directions to hide in the house of Minlo. In the end, they alerted the house of Minlo and the bandits started fighting with the house of Minlo. We took advantage of the chaos to cause trouble everywhere. We originally thought that this group of bandits would be immediately defeated, and we had already made plans to retreat. Who would have thought that the elites of the house of Minlo would be transferred out of the mountain tonight? We don't know what they were going to do. When the bandits saw that there weren't any more elites of the house of Minlo coming out to attack them, they arrogantly continued to attack. We also took advantage of the situation and stayed for a while longer. You saw what happened afterwards. So that's how it is. Are there many such bandit factions in the mountain range surrounding the Valley of Sunshine? Han Shuo nodded and asked with a smile. Of course. It's precisely because the Valley of Sunshine is in the middle of 3 countries that many large merchants want to do business in the Valley of Sunshine. That's why there are many bandit factions in the surrounding area. There are even 2 bandit bands with thousands of people. They were formed by wanted criminals from the 3 countries. The leaders of these 2 bandit bands are a man and a woman. The man is called Gustav, nicknamed the Butcher. He's an infamous wanted criminal in the Kasi Empire. He kills without batting an eyelid and is extremely cruel and cold-blooded. If a caravan were to run into his bandit band, it would truly be bad luck. He would plunder all the normal goods and take all the beauties. If he's in a bad mood, he'll kill the rest without leaving a single survivor. Back then, Florida worked with Gustav to frame our old chief, causing him to meet with misfortune. Even my little sister went missing with him. I'll kill this Gustav sooner or later. There's also a woman called Janet. This woman should be considered to have inherited her father's business. Her father was a bandit, her grandfather was a bandit, and her great-grandfather was also a bandit. They're from a famous bandit clan near the Valley of Sunshine. She was raised to be a bandit from birth. Although this woman isn't a good person, she still abides by the rules. When her bandit band runs into merchants, their lives are usually not in danger as long as they don't resist. Apart from the 2 largest bandit bands controlled by these 2, there are still a dozen or so bandit factions of various sizes in the surrounding Valley of Sunshine. It's just that the remaining ones are a bit smaller in scale and aren't as famous or powerful as these 2. Trunks slowly explained to Han Shuo. Han Shuo listened for a while and carefully inquired about the strength of those bandit bands before nodding. It looks like the glorious Tanai bandits and mercenaries complement each other. Whether it's bandits or mercenaries, they're both indispensable. What do you mean? Trunks asked. Without bandits, merchants won't need protection, and mercenaries won't be able to make money. Without mercenaries, merchants won't dare to come here to do business, and bandits won't have anything to steal. Therefore, it's completely reasonable for both bandits and mercenaries to exist in the Valley of Sunshine. With the strength of the 4 factions in the Valley of Sunshine, they should have the power to exterminate these bandits. However, Perhaps it's because they understand this that they didn't make a move and allowed the bandits to exist. Han Shuo smiled faintly as he explained. Trunks chuckled when he heard Han Shuo's words. That's right. The old chief understood this long ago. I didn't think you'd figure it out so quickly as well. Nodding, Han Shuo looked at the sky and said, Let's go. It's getting late. Let's hurry back to the Valley of Sunshine. I also want to go take a look. Ever since the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band had left, Han Shuo had always felt a voice calling out to him from afar. Han Shuo had originally thought that the little skull had run into danger again, but he realized that something wasn't right after a bit of careful observation. It wasn't until later on that Han Shuo focused his attention and carefully sensed that the voice was coming from the dark forest. This place wasn't very far from the dark forest, and the cemetery of death was in the dark forest. When Han Shuo realized that the call seemed to be coming from the dark forest, he immediately understood that the Earth Elite zombie had successfully broken out of the ground. However, due to the boundary of the cemetery of death, he couldn't use his senses to find Han Shuo, so he could only passively send out signals. Chapter 219. Han Shuo and Trunks returned to the Valley of Sunshine one after the other. Gilbert, Emily, and Phoebe had already returned to the shop with the place of extreme water. They were anxiously waiting for Han Shuo, afraid that something had happened to Han Shuo. Are you all right? Who would have thought that old fellow Ferguson would also be in the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band? It's a good thing that his main target wasn't us, otherwise Gilbert and we wouldn't have been able to return so easily. Emily sighed with lingering fear when she saw that Han Shuo had returned safely. Ferguson seems to care quite a bit about this grandson of his. The Rainbow Sickle mercenary band suffered heavy casualties tonight. They definitely won't take this lying down. Let's be careful. Han Shuo understood that the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band wasn't weak. The reason why the valley had been so chaotic this time was because the experts weren't in Tanai. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to cause such a ruckus so easily. What happened afterwards? Phoebe and the other two had left early and didn't know what had happened afterwards. When she saw that Han Shuo had returned safely, Phoebe couldn't help but ask, Nothing important. I took advantage of the chaos to escape after you guys left. Han Shuo responded. Heartfelt calls traveled from the distant dark forest and circled around Han Shuo's heart. Seeing that there wasn't much to explain, Han Shuo couldn't hold back his curiosity and immediately said, There shouldn't be any problems during the day. Everyone has been busy all night. Let's rest a bit before the sky brightens. Han Shuo hastily returned to his room after speaking and chanted an incantation. The loyal little skull appeared in front of him, bone dagger in hand. After giving the order, Han Shuo took out the magic staff that led to the cemetery of death and assembled the magical formation. He hastily walked into the formation and activated it with his mental strength. A dazzling white light flashed by, and the scene changed drastically in an instant. Walking out of the main hall of the cemetery of death, one could see mounds of earth rising from the ground as far as the eye could see. Under the dusky sky, dense earth elements continuously gathered at the place of extreme earth. Like the undulating waves of the sea, the ground trembled slightly. Mounds rose and fell one after another, and the hard soil became as soft as sand. In the middle of the deep hole, the soil was constantly churning, as if there was a big loach rolling around inside. The cemetery of death was protected by a special boundary. Anyone who wanted to enter or exit the cemetery of death would have to open it with the eye of darkness that Han Shuo possessed. As soon as the Earth Elite zombie had successfully emerged, it had instinctively searched for traces of Han Shuo. It just so happened that the Valley of Sunshine where Han Shuo resided wasn't too far from the dark forest. Therefore, when it sensed Han Shuo's presence, it immediately wanted to approach Han Shuo. Unfortunately, it was blocked by the special boundary of the Cemetery of Death and had no way of leaving. Therefore, it impatiently stirred up the earth, seeming to want to use its special ability to leave through the earth. However, it was obvious that this mysterious place, the Cemetery of Death, did indeed have its own special and mysterious aspects. As the favored child of the Earth Elite zombie, who could move through the earth at will, was actually unable to break through this restriction. This was enough to prove that the Cemetery of Death, as the holy land of necromancers, truly lived up to its name of mystery. "Come out." When Han Shuo appeared, he immediately called out softly. As soon as he finished speaking, a yellowish shadow suddenly broke out from the center of the sand and stood straight in front of Han Shuo. It was still the same ordinary zombie warrior, but its appearance had undergone tremendous changes after undergoing the refinement of the demonic arts. First of all, the originally dark green skin on its face had turned yellowish-brown, and its entire body was covered in an oily yellow armor. Faint light flowed from the surface of the armor, and dense earth chi overflowed from it. This oily yellow armor had been slowly formed after the Earth Elite Zombie had absorbed the earth chi from the place of extreme earth, along with some special materials that Han Shuo had mixed with his body. The armor covered his entire body, and the toughness of his body had greatly increased compared to before. He could use the element of earth to form all kinds of attacks, and he could also use the earth escape technique to conceal his tracks or suddenly attack others. The Earth Elite Zombie was about 1.8 meters tall and had an ordinary face. At this moment, it opened its ghastly mouth, revealing a somewhat simple and honest smile as it stared at Han Shuo in a daze. Like Little Skull, although the Earth Elite Zombie had a soul, it couldn't directly communicate with Han Shuo. It could only communicate through the mysterious connection between the two. The Earth Elite Zombie looked at Han Shuo with a grin and gestured with its large hands. A hill on the ground slowly flattened, and the entire area was restored to its original state. "All right, I know your abilities, so you don't need to show off." It was like a naughty child, eager to show off its abilities. Han Shuo understood that the Earth Elite Zombie had just formed, and its intelligence was still very low. It needed to be constantly instilled with knowledge in order for it to understand more things. The Earth Elite Zombie's lips moved as soon as Han Shuo's words fell. He flipped over and leapt into the center of his hiding place. The ground then trembled lightly as his figure reappeared. However, when the Earth Elite Zombie reappeared, its two hands were holding three throbbing blurry shadows. The three demons have formed as well. Han Shuo was astonished, and in his joy, he immediately activated his magical yuan and shot a black light towards the three blurry shadows. He opened his mouth and yelled, "By my command, demons, return to your positions." As soon as the black light hit the three blurry shadows, a swirling mass of jet-black mist continuously appeared from the three blurry shadows. Then, the originally blurry shadows gradually became clear. Long tails, sharp fangs, and the size of a fierce wild monkey. However, they all had two sharp curved horns, a pair of bat-like wings, and a pair of dark green evil eyes that shone with a frightening light. These were the forms of the three demons. After the three demons gradually became clear, they flew out from the Earth Elite Zombie's two hands and shuttled through the air like lightning. Their forms changed from solid to incorporeal, and from incorporeal to solid again. They were faintly discernible in the air as they changed their forms at will. Their mouths emitted soul-stealing, joyful howls. The three demons circled around Han Shuo once, and with a thought from Han Shuo, they entered the back of his neck into Han Shuo's body, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Then, Han Shuo smiled faintly, and with a sway of his body, four identical Han Shuos appeared out of thin air. Apart from Han Shuo's original body, the other three Han Shuos were transformed from demons. It was truly mysterious and unfathomable. For a moment, the Earth Elite Zombie didn't know what was going on. It was obvious that he was confused. He stood there motionless, blinking his eyes as he foolishly looked at Han Shuo. After a while, the Earth Elite Zombie grinned foolishly, and with a movement of his thick body, he instantly arrived at the position of Han Shuo's real body on the far left. He even extended his left hand and pointed at Han Shuo, meaning, "I found you." There was a mysterious connection between the two, so Han Shuo didn't find it strange that the Earth Elite Zombie was able to recognize the real one. Seeing the Earth Elite Zombie pointing at him foolishly, Han Shuo's thoughts moved again, and the three demons turned into fake bodies, turning into three rays of black light and returning to his body. He continuously used the three demons to transform into fake bodies in an extremely short amount of time, appearing out of thin air and then quickly disappearing. After doing this a few dozen times, Han Shuo was finally able to quickly and skillfully grasp this secret art. At first, it took the Earth Elite zombie a while to recognize Han Shuo, but when Han Shuo repeatedly did this, the Earth Elite zombie was able to rely on the connection between the two to quickly point out the real one as soon as Han Shuo's fake body appeared. He thought that Han Shuo was playing an interesting game with him, and tirelessly carried out the operation to find Han Shuo. He didn't feel bored or tired at all, and kept grinning foolishly. He didn't have the coldness and fierceness that a zombie should have, which made Han Shuo a bit worried that he wouldn't be able to grow quickly. Han Shuo wasn't the zombie driver from Chu Kanglin's memories, so he naturally couldn't bring a zombie warrior with him to various places and occasions. Therefore, after some consideration, Han Shuo decided to send the Earth Elite zombie to the space and time he came from. Han Shuo wasn't worried about the Earth Elite zombie's strength. Having experienced the secret method of demonic refinement, the Earth Elite zombie could skillfully use the Yuan energy of Earth and would certainly become a very competent helper. However, since the Earth Elite zombie had just broken out of the ground, it seemed that because he hadn't experienced the tempering of a great battle, he was a bit naive and honest, and needed to grow quickly. In the plane that the little skull had always stayed in, there seemed to be powerful existences everywhere. Even Han Shuo didn't know how tyrannical the little skull's strength was, but even in that plane, he would encounter enemies that he needed to avoid. It seemed that letting the Earth Elite zombie return home in glory would be a good idea. Let me introduce you to a friend. He has my aura on him. You'll definitely like him. Han Shuo thought for a moment, and said to the Earth Elite zombie with a smile. Then, using the connection between him and the little skull, Han Shuo chanted a magic incantation. When the little skull appeared in place, the zombie and the skeleton stared at each other silently. The purple demon eye of the little skull was shining brightly, and it seemed to be very interested in the existence of the Earth Elite zombie. It took the initiative to walk to the Earth Elite zombie's side, and stretched out its bony claw to pat the Earth Elite zombie's shoulder. It used its other bony claw to beat the bones in front of the Earth Elite zombie's chest, and gestured to Han Shuo. The meaning seemed to be, "I'll protect him, don't worry." Chapter 220. Both of them had Han Shuo's blood essence. They instinctively felt close to each other, and Han Shuo could feel that feelings were slowly growing between them. The little skull and the Earth Elite zombie, who were looking at each other, seemed to be slowly communicating about something. After a while, they both looked at Han Shuo with eager eyes. "All right, I'll send you back." The two sent the message that they were leaving together. Han Shuo responded with a smile, and with an incantation, the little skull and the Earth Elite zombie disappeared from the Cemetery of Death. After the two left, the Cemetery of Death regained its peace. The ground of the place of extreme Earth was still flat, and the Een Demon Cave had stopped operating because of the Een Demon's emergence. Looking around and seeing that there was nothing to worry about, Han Shuo made a trip to the valley where the dwarves lived. "Han, why did you think of coming here?" As soon as he arrived at the dwarves' valley, these simple dwarves expressed their deep enthusiasm. Along the way, there were people constantly asking him friendly questions. After Han Shuo's last visit, the dwarves had received a large amount of food and daily necessities. Now, their elderly and children were all wearing thick cotton-padded clothes to ward off the cold, and there were warm stoves to bake them. With enough food to quench their hunger, even the depths of winter no longer seemed frightening. Along the way, Han Shuo could see from the dwarves' faces that they were brimming with satisfaction and contentment. When these dwarves saw Han Shuo appear, they all expressed gratitude and welcomed him, yelling to each other to spread the news of Han Shuo's arrival. "Uncle Han, this is for you." On the way to the center of the valley, a 6 or 7-year-old dwarf child holding a skewer of tonghulu walked up to Han Shuo, holding up a glossy roasted meat, and said in his tender voice, "Thank you, good child." Bending down, Han Shuo touched the dwarf child, who was only a few dozen centimeters tall, and said with a smile, casually taking the roasted meat from him, Some of the adult dwarves around him showed kind smiles, and the atmosphere seemed very harmonious. It seemed that they had a very good impression of Han Shuo. When Han Shuo arrived at the center of the village and saw the familiar dwarf warrior Bennett, as well as the old dwarf village chief Calvin, Han Shuo smiled and asked, "Elder, how have you been lately?" "Dear Han, with you, this winter is no longer cold. Everyone will have warm clothes and enough food. No one will starve to death in winter." Chief Calvin had a gratified expression on his face as he faced Han Shuo and expressed his gratitude to Han Shuo with dwarven etiquette. Although Han Shuo hadn't helped these simple dwarves completely out of good intentions in the beginning, he realized that these stubborn dwarves were actually very easy to get along with after coming into contact with them. They were unbelievably generous to those they acknowledged as friends. Unknowingly, Han Shuo had gained their friendship, but some of their actions and methods had also gained Han Shuo's favor. This made Han Shuo, who had originally intended to make use of them, truly treat them as trustworthy friends. That's good, that's good. If there's anything else you need, you can take advantage of this trip to let me know. I'm about to return to the human world again and can help you bring something along. Han Shuo maintained a kind smile on his face as he spoke unhurriedly to Calvin. Waving his hands, Calvin said emotionally, "No need. We'll be able to get through this winter easily. When spring comes, we'll need to use our own efforts in exchange for more returns. You know, we're a hard-working race. Children need to be raised from a young age and can't be allowed to develop lazy habits." Nodding, Han Shuo said understandingly, "So that's how it is. Right, I've come this time because I want you to help me forge some weapons and armor. Would that be convenient for you, Elder?" "Han, you're treating us like strangers. We're friends. How could we not? The wild beasts don't come out during the winter, and there are very few places to move about in the dark forest. Forging weapons is our hobby, and it's a very interesting activity to forge some weapons when we're free. There's no problem at all." Calvin didn't hesitate at all and immediately agreed readily. He even looked quite happy. "Really, Han, we've been thinking about how to repay you during this time. Now that you want us to forge weapons, we don't have to worry about it anymore." Bennett laughed heartily as he described their sincerity to Han Shuo. It looked like these dwarves were still grateful for the daily necessities he'd given them. These dwarves weren't willing to take advantage of friends that they truly acknowledged. Therefore, they'd been searching for ways to repay Han Shuo. Han Shuo was a bit embarrassed after Bennett's words. Han Shuo had harbored malicious intentions from the very beginning when he'd approached these dwarves. However, the dwarves' kindness and simplicity made him feel ashamed of his inferiority sometimes. Let's not do anything for now because I haven't decided what type of weapon I want to forge. When I've decided what weapon I need, I'll bring some raw materials with me next time," Han Shuo said. After leaving the dwarves' valley, Han Shuo didn't linger in the dark forest and returned to the glorious Tanai through the cemetery of death. Putting away the magic staff, Han Shuo walked out of the room and discovered that the entire shop was empty. He was a bit stunned and didn't know where they'd all gone. Han Shuo had given all the authority over the Soul Destroyer mercenary band to Trunks, while Phoebe was in charge of handling the treasures. Emily was in charge of keeping an eye on the messy affairs of the Dark Mantle organization, while Gilbert played a protective role in protecting Phoebe and Emily. The sky was like a burning cloud and the sunset was bright red, indicating that it was already evening. During the day, the soldiers of the Cairo mercenary band were everywhere in the glorious Tanai. The guards of the Valley of Sunshine's merchants were also patrolling the streets. Therefore, Han Shuo wasn't too worried about their safety. Seeing that he was the only one left in the shop, Han Shuo took out the thick tome of necromancy he'd obtained from the Cemetery of Death and began to slowly study it. During the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band's trip last night, the long-lost canopy of necromancy had been unleashed and had played an enormous role. If it wasn't for Light Grand Magus Ferguson's timely arrival, the dark creatures within the range of the canopy of necromancy would have continued to wreak havoc and display extraordinary battle strength. Even after absorbing the Calamity Church's Archmage Clarendon's memories, Han Shuo didn't have any memories of the canopy of necromancy. He didn't even have the corpse resurrection spell that he'd previously grasped. In other words, This magic tome from the Cemetery of Death was the crystallization of necromancy magic. It contained a large amount of necromancy knowledge, including some necromancy spells that had been lost in the past. These things were extremely useful to Han Shua. After obtaining Clarendon's memories, Han Shua's understanding of necromancy magic had already reached the level of an archmage. He could understand many of the difficult and specialized sentences in the tome and didn't need to ask Fanny for more knowledge. Time always passed so quickly when one was studying magic. The sky had completely darkened in the blink of an eye. Light footsteps outside roused Han Shua from his reverie. With a thought, Han Shua clearly saw the newcomers through the surveillance of the three demons. It turned out that Trunks and Gilbert had returned together. "Brian, I have good news for you. I think you'll be very happy to hear it." Trunks had a joyful expression as he spoke to Han Shua. Starting, Han Shua was surprised and asked, "What good news? Do you remember Odysseus and the other 5 who adventured with you in the dark forest? What is it?" "When I came back today, I saw the 6 of them enter the Valley of Sunshine. Odysseus and the others have extraordinary strength and deep feelings for you. Our mercenary band has just been established, and we need strong and reliable people like them. If you invite them, I think they might be willing to join us." Han Shua couldn't help but say happily when he heard Trunks' words, "This is good news indeed." Odysseus and Gordon are both senior swordsmen, and there's also the water adept mage Aphrodite, a journeyman thunder mage, and the female elf Archernia. Their strength isn't weak at all. If they can join us, I think it will be a great addition to our mercenary band. It looks like our luck is quite good, heh? They seem to be protecting a merchant this time. I spoke to them, and they said they'll come tomorrow to catch up with you. I think there shouldn't be any problems." Trunks smiled. Han Shua, who'd been listening to Trunks speak, suddenly furrowed his brow and looked at a large tree not far away. He said lowly, "Mr. Edwin, since you're here, let's talk in the yard." Chapter 221. The demons had been placed in the surroundings to spy on the surroundings. Not even the slightest movement around the shop could escape Han Shua's notice. Even if the other was a dark Grand Magus, it would be impossible for them to enter Han Shua's territory without making a sound. Han Shua had already discovered Edwin and Belinda's tracks through the demons when they landed on a large tree in the distance. He called out without hesitation. Even if Han Shua was the only one in the shop, Han Shua wouldn't be afraid of Edwin using the magical formation in the courtyard, not to mention that Gilbert and Trunks were also here. Edwin and Belinda were obviously stunned by Han Shua's terrifying detection abilities. Astonishment was written all over Edwin's face as he revealed himself from the dense foliage. He looked at Han Shua in the distance and raised his voice. "How did you discover me?" "Nothing is impossible," Han Shua shouted coldly and then shot a look at Gilbert and Trunks. A calm smile appeared on his face as he elegantly pointed at the empty chairs in the courtyard. He raised his head to look at them. "Since you two are in the mood, why don't you come over and talk in detail? I don't sense any killing intent from you. It looks like you're not here to kill me this time." Han Shua, whose magical arts had reached the bloodlust realm, actually had an extremely acute sense for killing intent that naturally exuded from experts, perhaps due to his growing desire to kill. Edwin and Belinda made no effort to conceal their expressions when they landed on the tree and looked at the courtyard. Their expressions were calm in that moment, with a few traces of curiosity and caution, but they didn't reveal any killing intent. Edwin was even more surprised when he heard Han Shua's words. His gaze when he looked at Han Shua was full of surprise as he sized up Han Shua, seeming to want to see something. After a while, Edwin revealed a bitter smile and shook his head. "I came with sincerity this time, but I can't tell if you have any intention of killing me. Because your courtyard is too dangerous, I won't be coming down for now. I don't want to be killed by a group of young but formidable children like you." As he spoke, Edwin landed lightly on the roof of the shop with Belinda. The two didn't dare approach the courtyard lightly, as if they were very wary of the mysteries within. They were prepared to deal with a sudden attack at any time and appeared to be very cautious. To be honest, Han Shua did hope that the two would land in the courtyard and then use the magical formation to combine the strength of Gilbert and Trunks to kill them with a thunderous blow. This way, he wouldn't have to constantly be on guard against Edwin's sudden attack. It was a pity that sly old fox Edwin wouldn't fall for it so easily. Edwin had come to spy on the situation last night and deeply understood the dangers of this courtyard. That was why he hadn't dared to take the risk and land in. Now that his plan had failed, Han Shua's expression immediately darkened. He looked darkly at Edwin and Belinda on the roof and said impatiently, "If you're not here to kill me, then are you planning on working together to deal with Ferguson? He's an important figure in the Church of Light and has an irreconcilable enmity with you. You're the ones he should be focusing on." "You're wrong. Perhaps you don't even know it yourself, but you've become the Church of Light's mortal enemy. They'll make you disappear from this world at all costs." Edwin looked deeply at Han Shua and spoke lowly. "Oh, I don't think so. Ferguson doesn't represent the entire Church of Light. I think that my enmity with Florida isn't so serious that the entire Church of Light would act against me. Aren't you being a bit too alarmist?" Han Shua was speechless and spoke mockingly. Looking at Han Shua with a pitying expression, Edwin explained slowly, "Your miraculous performance last night made the Church of Light realize just how terrifying you are. The fact that your little skull doesn't shine with the radiance of light in particular has sowed the seeds of disaster for you. Even if it wasn't for his grandson, Florida, Ferguson would definitely act against you because your existence is a serious threat to the Church of Light." Han Shua immediately sank into silence when he heard these words. Han Shua wasn't a stupid person. It was just that he'd never seriously considered this problem. When Edwin reminded him, Han Shua recalled that the Church of Light seemed to have played the most important role in the destruction of necromancy. Light magic had a fatal destructive power against the dark creatures of the Necromancy Major. When the Necromancy Major was at its peak, hordes of dark creatures would wreak havoc on the continent. The Church of Light would always send out large numbers of disciples to use the most direct and simple light magic to bathe large numbers of dark creatures in light magic and deal a devastating blow. As Han Shua thought carefully, he quickly realized that Edwin's words weren't false. The little skull and zombies that he'd refined using the secret arts of the magic would be impervious to the destructive attacks of light magic. This was an absolutely intolerable fact for the Church of Light. It looked like he'd unknowingly gotten himself into great trouble. Seeing that Han Shua was silent, his straight eyebrows deeply furrowed, and his expression growing darker and darker, Edwin obviously understood that Han Shua had already realized the severity of the matter. Smiling faintly, Edwin pointed a finger at Han Shua and said in an extremely bewitching voice, "I'm sure you understand how much influence the Church of Light has on the profound continent. Apart from our Calamity Church, who has always resisted them, there are very few powers that can resist them. Don't hesitate. As long as you join our Calamity Church, we can forget all our past grievances. With you, our Calamity Church's necromancer's research on dark creatures will reach a level that no one before us has ever achieved. Then, with large numbers of dark creatures as an army, we can destroy any Church of Light stronghold in the world and make all living creatures prostrate themselves under our teachings. And you will become the most respected person in the Calamity Church. You will be able to obtain anything you want. Wealth, women, power. It's all at your fingertips. What a wonderful thing. I'm sure that with your wisdom, you can imagine the grand future. Honored Master, this old thing's words are quite reasonable. Just agree to him." Dark Dragon Gilbert was so excited when he heard about wealth and women that he didn't know which way was north. "Shut up." Han Shua glared angrily at Gilbert before looking at Edwin. "I'm very sorry. Although your suggestion is very tempting, I think I can't agree to it. It's your church's reputation that's poor. I don't want to become the target of everyone's criticism." The Calamity Church was a power that everyone hated on the entire continent. This church hid in the shadows and possessed power that no country dared ignore. They had a fanatical belief in destruction and an incomprehensible, stubborn desire. They were incompatible with the creeds of any country or religion on the continent. If he joined such a church, Han Shua would become the enemy of all countries. This was something that Han Shua absolutely didn't want to see. Not to mention that every dark creature refined using demonic arts was extremely difficult to refine. It required an enormous amount of manpower and resources. Han Shuo didn't have the slightest bit of confidence that he would be able to refine even more wondrous creatures in large quantities. Even if he succeeded, according to the teachings of the Calamity Church, the profound continent would be shrouded in a sea of blood and fire, finally turning into a wasteland. This was obviously not something that he wanted to see. Han Shuo's resolute refusal without the slightest hesitation obviously puzzled Edwin. He was about to continue trying to persuade him when a beam of black light suddenly shot through the air, shooting straight for Edwin on the roof. "You should all die. I will avenge Big Sister Elaine today." Emily flew over with a furious expression on her face. Her long hair danced in the wind as she held her magic staff, baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. She looked like an enraged tigress. Looking disdainfully at Emily in the distance, Edwin waved his hand and blocked all the attacks with a barrier of darkness. He then looked at Han Shuo and smiled faintly. "Don't be in a hurry to refuse. I think that you might change your mind when the Church of Light takes action." Edwin didn't linger after speaking and left with Belinda, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. If the Grand Magus Edwin wanted to use the levitation spell to leave, no one here would be able to stop him. Therefore, Emily and Phoebe didn't foolishly chase after him and returned to the courtyard. "What's going on?" Emily looked at Han Shuo and asked. Smiling wryly and sighing lightly, Han Shuo said, "I've run into big trouble." "What's going on? What's so big that it's giving you a headache?" Emily had been with Han Shuo for so long, but she'd never seen Han Shuo have such a headache. She couldn't help but ask. When Han Shuo explained the course of events to Han Shuo and Phoebe, the two girls were startled and realized the severity of the situation. Their eyebrows were tightly knit, and they didn't know how to respond. The Church of Light was different from the Calamity Church. They were the most influential religious organization on the profound continent and had a wide network among the populace. Large numbers of people worshipped the Church of Light in any country, and their influence was greater than that of a small country. If all the followers of the Church of Light were like Ferguson, then I think the Church of Light wouldn't amount to much. Han Shuo said disdainfully after thinking for a while. "No, the majority of the people in the Church of Light are kind and upright. At least, some of the people I know are worthy of respect in terms of character. Ferguson wasn't a bad person to begin with, but he spoiled his grandson too much and often cleaned up after Florida's wanton and willful actions. That's why he gradually became so utilitarian. In the entire continent, apart from the Calamity Church, there are many necromancers. I think as long as you don't join the Calamity Church, the Church of the God of Light won't necessarily put you to death. Not all the followers of the Church of Light are so unreasonable." Emily thought for a while and couldn't help but speak words of comfort to Han Shuo. "It's hard to say. This matter is indeed somewhat thorny. However, if the Church of Light wants to make a move against me indiscriminately, I won't be lenient. No matter what excuse anyone uses, as long as they want to kill me, I won't hesitate to find a way to kill them." Han Shuo thought for a while and said in a low voice, "Master, no matter what you do, your loyal servant Gilbert will swear loyalty to you." Dark Dragon Gilbert said in a timely manner, "Trunks, all the Soul Destroyer mercenary band's operations in the future will be carried out under your name. Also, don't tell anyone about the relationship between this mercenary and me. Otherwise, I think it may bring unnecessary trouble to the mercenary band because of my identity." Han Shuo suddenly said to Trunks after pondering for a while, "Brian, do you think I'm someone who's afraid of trouble?" Trunks was somewhat displeased as he said coldly. Shaking his head, Han Shuo said, "Don't think too much. The mercenary band is mine. However, don't make this matter public for the time being. It won't be too late to make it public after I've settled the Church of Light's troubles. You should know that our mercenary band has just started, and I also want it to develop even faster. Therefore, we can't let this matter affect it for the time being." After hearing Han Shuo's explanation, Trunks' expression returned to normal. He smiled faintly and nodded, saying, "You're the leader. I'll do whatever you say. This is the mercenary band's rule. What have you two been doing today? Why haven't you been in the shop the entire day?" Seeing that Trunks had agreed, Han Shuo turned his head to look at Emily and Phoebe, asking in astonishment, "I've negotiated a big business deal. I've already dealt with all the things you gave me. We've received a total of 70,000 gold coins. Apart from the amount used to establish the mercenary band, I'll be keeping the rest for you for the time being," Phoebe explained. Sister Cecilia, one of the 3 heavyweights of the Dark Mantle, has always been in charge of the Dark Mantle's various affairs outside of the Empire. She suddenly came to the Valley of Sunshine today, and I immediately went to see her after receiving the news. Because we talked about old times, I was delayed for the entire day. Emily looked at Han Shuo and explained. She paused and smiled faintly, saying, "She's very curious about you because I've discussed some matters of cooperation with you." Chapter 222. Cecilia was one of the 3 heavyweights of the Dark Mantle. She had ascended to a high position and held great power at a young age. She was a legendary woman of the Dark Mantle and was deeply admired by all members of the Dark Mantle. Cecilia had always been in various countries and was in charge of some matters of the enemy countries. She rarely returned to the capital of the Empire unless there was an urgent matter. As the center of the 3 countries, the Valley of Sunshine was a very special existence. For Cecilia to come to such a place, it must be because she had important matters to attend to. Otherwise, she wouldn't have stayed here. Han Shuo didn't have any improper thoughts towards this legendary woman who was also very charming. When he heard Emily say that she was very curious about him, he only appeared a bit surprised and didn't say much. "Brian, I have something to say to you in private. Look for me in a bit." Phoebe stretched and walked towards her room, muttering to herself, "I've been busy all day. I'll take a bath and relax first." Trunks and Gilbert immediately showed dubious expressions to Han Shuo when they saw Phoebe leave like this. Emily, on the other hand, pouted and snorted softly. She was probably a little angry. "Trunks, make a list and see what kind of weapons our mercenaries need. I'll find the dwarves to forge them in the near future." Han Shuo suddenly remembered this matter and said to Trunks, "The dwarves live in a very mysterious place. How did you find them?" Trunks was very surprised and looked at Han Shuo in amazement. "Because of some opportunities, I got to know a dwarf village and have a good relationship with them. I can ask them to forge some weapons. I'll also discuss it with Phoebe later and have her help me purchase some rare metals. This way, the weapons forged by the dwarves will be even sharper." "So that's how it is. All right then, I'll think about it tonight and make a list for you tomorrow." Looking at the sky, Han Shuo said, It's getting late. Everyone should rest first." "Honored Master, Miss Phoebe has only just returned to her room and hasn't started bathing yet. Aren't you a bit impatient?" Gilbert chuckled lowly in a lewd manner and hinted meaningfully, "Gilbert, if you really can't hold it in, I can reward you with some gold coins. You can go to some alleys in the Valley of Sunshine and solve your problems." Han Shuo looked askance at Gilbert and suggested. Laughing wildly, Trunks clutched his stomach and laughed heartily at Han Shuo. He already tried today. Unfortunately, although he was willing to spend a large sum of money, all the girls in the Valley of Sunshine believed him to be a super pervert because of his strange actions earlier. Therefore, not a single girl dared receive him. Han Shuo couldn't help but laugh when he heard that Gilbert really couldn't resist visiting prostitutes and was willing to spend money but couldn't find a girl. "Little lewd dragon, you're a little lewd dragon, all right. It's a pity that you can't be lewd even when you spend money. You're really pitiful." Gilbert's face was dejected when these words were spoken, and then his expression grew furious as he yelled, "It's all because of you that I can't find a girl, because of you telling me to collect some virgin blood. You're making fun of me. I'm bitterly disappointed." "How vulgar. How disgusting." Emily rolled her eyes at Gilbert with extreme disdain and walked back to her room with a cold snort. Hey, are you kidding me? Master was the one who told me to collect it. Why aren't you blaming him?" Gilbert cried out loudly when he saw Emily look down on him with an expression of being wronged. "All right, if you really can't hold it in anymore, you can fly to a further city. I know that this is the nature of you dark dragons. Don't worry, Master is willing to provide you with gold coins to visit prostitutes. Han Shua laughed oddly and paid no more attention to Gilbert as he walked towards Emily's room. Although Han Shua and Phoebe were boyfriend and girlfriend on the surface, the two hadn't developed to the point of entangling their bodies. Han Shua could only look for Emily to resolve some of his physical needs. Wasn't it Miss Phoebe who told him to go? Why is he looking for Madame Emily instead? Did he go to the wrong place? Gilbert looked at Trunks and grumbled in confusion. Rubbing his chin, Trunks watched as Han Shua disappeared into Emily's room, a thoughtful expression on his face as he smiled. Don't mind your master's business. Talking less and doing more is the rule you should follow. When Han Shua entered Emily's room, he placed one of the three demons monitoring the entire store outside her room. He then walked into the room with a cheeky smile. All right, don't be angry. Go find your little Phoebe, Emily said huffily as she glared at Han Shua. If you want to find someone, you should find my little Emily first. Just let Phoebe wait. Han Shua smiled as he walked towards Emily, ignoring Emily's resistance as he pulled her into his embrace. His hands moved up and down as he wantonly violated her voluptuous body, causing Emily to pant heavily. In just a short while, she was completely aroused and took the initiative to cooperate with Han Shua. The two quickly took off their clothes and intertwined with familiarity. By the time Emily's body had softened into a ball of cotton and she'd been thoroughly exhausted by Han Shua's ferocious thrusts, the lingering resentment in her heart had long since disappeared without a trace after a few moments of pleasure. At this time, her entire naked body was flushed as she lazily curled up in Han Shua's embrace. Her slender fingers lightly tapped on Han Shua's chest as she whispered, I know I shouldn't be angry, but sometimes I just can't control myself. His large hands caressed Emily's smooth back as Han Shua said softly, This shows that you care about me. You don't have to explain anything. It would be strange if you weren't angry at all. Han Shua and Phoebe said words of love after that, leaning against each other as they slowly became affectionate. They both ignored the passage of time and forgot about Phoebe's words from before. However, Phoebe, who was in the other room, waited for a long time after taking a bath and changing her clothes. However, she found that Han Shua still hadn't come over. Gradually, she became somewhat impatient. After putting on her clothes neatly, Phoebe pushed open the door and left. She crossed the courtyard and walked straight to Han Shua's room. When she arrived at the door, she knocked and said, Brian, can I come in? When Phoebe pushed open the door to her room, Han Shua had already discovered her movements through the demons. Seeing Phoebe walk straight to his room, Han Shua immediately put on his clothes in a hurry. He said anxiously, Damn it, I forgot what Phoebe said just now. Afraid of being caught in bed, Emily's expression was also flustered. She hurriedly put on her clothes and casually tied up her messy hair. She urged Han Shua, You should go back quickly. If she finds out, it won't be good. While nodding, Han Shua walked to the window at the back and jumped out. Then, he walked from the back wall to his room. He used the hidden strength of the demonic art to open his window and flipped over to jump in. He casually glanced at himself in the mirror before opening the door with an awkward expression. Why did you only open the door now? I told you to look for me just now. Why didn't you come? Phoebe looked at Han Shua reproachfully. Then, she saw that Han Shua's trousers were loose and asked suspiciously, What were you doing just now? Why didn't you pull up your trousers? Feeling guilty, Han Shua's expression was a little flustered. A thought flashed through his mind and he hurriedly said, No, nothing. I was going to the toilet. So that's how it is. Phoebe chuckled and said understandingly. She walked towards Han Shua with a smile and looked charmingly at Han Shua. She said, Then you should still pull up your trousers before opening the door. Look at you now, really. As he said this, to Han Shua's surprise, Phoebe squatted down slightly with a faint smile on her face and helped Han Shua pull up his loose trousers. However, a strong odor suddenly came from Han Shua's trousers. In an instant, through close contact, it rushed into Phoebe's nose and mouth. As soon as this odor was inhaled by Phoebe, Phoebe immediately covered her nose and exclaimed involuntarily, What Why is there such a strong odor? As she said this, Phoebe couldn't help but pay attention to Han Shua's trousers. However, she found some white spots appearing on the trousers between Han Shua's legs. It should be some kind of liquid that had just been air-dried. A beautiful cheeks suddenly turned red and hot. Phoebe obviously realized what those things were. For a moment, she was so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. She was stunned and didn't know what to do. Oh no, I'm dead this time. I just left in a hurry and forgot to clean up my lower body. There was only Emily in the shop. It seems that this time the matter has been exposed. Phoebe will definitely make things difficult for me. Han Shua's heart was perturbed, and he couldn't help but think in a panic. That, it's not what you think. Han Shua explained in a hurry and hurriedly fixed his trousers. It was difficult to hide the panic in his expression. Phoebe lowered her head and stood up. Her neck was red and hot. She actually didn't dare to look at Han Shua. She turned around and walked outside. When she reached the door, Phoebe suddenly stopped and whispered in a very low voice, "Brian, it's really hard for you. You have me as your girlfriend, but you still have to solve these problems by yourself. I'm just not ready yet. Give me some time. Don't do this in the future. I heard people say that doing it by yourself is very harmful to the body." Under Han Shua's dumbfounded expression, Phoebe blushed and said such words. She quickly left as if she was fleeing. It seemed that she was even more embarrassed than Han Shua. Hey, it's not what you think." Han Shua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shouted at Phoebe's back as she left. He also didn't know how to explain it. The next day, early in the morning, Han Shua, Emily, and Phoebe met very awkwardly in the morning. All of them had awkward expressions and didn't know what to say. Especially Han Shua, who had been misunderstood by Phoebe and had no way to explain it. Otherwise, it would implicate even more trouble. Therefore, he couldn't hide his embarrassment when facing Phoebe. Trunks and Gilbert, on the other hand, were looking at the three dubiously. Gilbert, in particular, chuckled mischievously and said, "Honored master, did you have a wonderful night last night?" "Aha, I think it must have been a memorable night." "Shut up." Han Shua flew into a rage out of humiliation and glared fiercely at Gilbert. "Brian, if the weapons on this list can be forged by the dwarves, it will definitely greatly increase the combat power and passion of our subordinates." A list full of weapons was handed to Han Shua by Trunks. I still have something to do, so I'll leave first." Emily was a little better, but last night's experience also made her a little shy, so she left first. "I also have something to do." When Phoebe saw Emily walk away, she also expressed her position and hurriedly planned to leave. "Phoebe, wait," Han Shua suddenly said to Phoebe, who was about to leave immediately. For no reason, Phoebe's face instantly turned red. She didn't dare to look at Han Shua. She just quickly glanced at Han Shua and said shyly, "What? L." Miss Phoebe, who's always so unkind to people, actually has such a shy side. It looks like last night's events have changed Miss Phoebe's personality. Gilbert still believed that something must have happened between Han Shua and Phoebe last night, and that it was just lewd nonsense. "Lewd dragon, don't think that everyone is as shameless and perverted as you. If you dare talk nonsense again, I'll stab you with my sword." Phoebe also flew into a rage out of humiliation and glared fiercely at Gilbert, threatening him with a cold face. "These are all things I need. Help me purchase them while you're at it." Taking out a list, Han Shua handed it to Phoebe, asking Phoebe to help him purchase some supplies. Taking the list from Han Shua, Phoebe gave a low and didn't say anything else, quickly leaving the shop. Not long after Phoebe left, Han Shua was discussing with Gilbert and Trunks how to deal with Tanai. Through the demons, Han Shua discovered that Odysseus and the others were cautiously looking around, standing in front of the door, not daring to enter. It looked like everyone who'd come to the Valley of Sunshine had heard of this shop's bad reputation. Odysseus and the others were no exception. It was obvious that they'd been too cautious due to the evil reputation of the cursed lands. "They're here." Han Shua smiled faintly and stood up to open the door. Chapter 223. Long time no see. Opening the door, Han Shuo stood outside and looked at Odysseus' group of 6 with a slight smile. The group of 6 cheered when they saw Han Shuo appear, their faces brimming with genuine joy. Odysseus and Gordon even rushed to Han Shuo and gave Han Shuo a hug. "It's really you. Why are you living here?" After letting go, the restless Gordon looked inside and said with some surprise, "Heh, come in first. This place is very safe. It's not as scary as you think." Han Shuo leaned to the side and motioned for the 6 to come in and chat. The 6 of them had been a bit fearful of this place before confirming that Han Shuo was inside. But when Han Shuo's words left Han Shuo's mouth, they no longer cowered in fear out of their trust in Han Shuo. They walked in openly and directly to the center of the yard. Odysseus and the others were a team of 3 warriors, 2 mages, and 1 archer. Odysseus was a senior swordsman, Anglo and Gordon were journeyman swordsmen, Aphrodite a water adept mage, Bard a thunder journeyman mage, and the female elven archer, Nia. After their adventure in the dark forest, the 6 had not only reaped rich rewards, but had also made breakthroughs in their strength. Journeyman swordsman Gordon had advanced to senior swordsman, and thunder journeyman mage Bard had also become an adept mage. Han Shuo had seen all of this from the changes in the symbols on their chests. "Brian, this place is the cursed land of the Valley of Sunshine. When we came to the Valley of Sunshine before, we'd heard people talk about the legend of this place, warning everyone not to enter this shop carelessly. Why are you living here?" Gordon was a straightforward person and couldn't hide his thoughts. He looked around when he entered the yard and directly asked Han Shuo after sitting down. "The legends aren't necessarily true. Those curses could be man-made. We haven't encountered any danger since we've been here for so long." Han Shuo didn't explain too much about the blood water demon's mischief to them. "How have you been recently?" As the captain, Odysseus was an upright and steady person. He looked at Han Shuo and asked with a smile, "Not too bad. What did you guys experience after leaving the dark forest?" "Gordon and Bard's cultivation has actually improved greatly." "Not bad," Han Shuo said. "After we separated from you in the dark forest, we went to Zajoski City and sold off our spoils in the dark forest. We made a sum of money and exchanged our weapons and equipment. We also picked out a magic staff for Bard to increase his magical power." After resting for a while, Gordon and Bard felt that they'd broken through and went to the guild to take the advancement test. After passing, we took on some missions to protect merchants near the Valley of Sunshine. This time, we entered the Valley of Sunshine to protect a merchant caravan. Odysseus smiled faintly and slowly explained to Han Shuo what had happened after they'd split up. Han Shuo glanced at Trunks on the side and thought for a moment. He then looked at Odysseus and said, "We're friends, so I'll speak frankly. Trunks and I have formed a small mercenary band, and we only have a few people at the moment. I'd really like you to join and help us make this small mercenary band a bit bigger." Odysseus and the others were all quite surprised when these words were spoken. They all looked at each other and didn't know how to respond for a moment. After staring blankly for a while, Odysseus looked at Han Shuo and said, "Brian, you're not joking, are you? Why did you think of forming a mercenary band? You've always been a loner. I don't think you're the kind of person who'd like to form a mercenary band." "It's true. We've already applied for a title. I think that if this mercenary band succeeds, it should be quite good in the future. I wonder if you're interested?" Han Shuo looked at Odysseus with a faint smile and sincerely invited them. "What's the specific situation? Can you tell me in detail?" Odysseus was obviously a bit interested, but he knew that this kind of thing couldn't be careless and asked carefully. Han Shuo briefly explained the origins and circumstances of the Soul Destroyer mercenary band, including Trunks' hatred and the recent conflict between Han Shuo and Florida. He didn't purposely conceal any of this. When Han Shuo finished speaking, the other 5's expressions changed. They obviously hadn't expected that Han Shuo and Trunks had already done so many sensational things in Tanai under the glorious sun in such a short period of time. They all seemed eager to give it a try and revealed expressions of interest. "I think I'll need to discuss this matter with them and then give you an answer." As the leader of the 6, Odysseus naturally needed to ask the other 5's opinions one by one. Therefore, He couldn't give an answer so quickly. Nodding in understanding, Han Shuo smiled faintly and said, I understand. You can think about it for a few days. In the following time, Han Shuo chatted happily with them about some interesting things in the dark forest. The six finally took their leave when it was almost noon. During this process, as a participant, Trunks would occasionally chime in with a word or two. However, Dark Dragon Jill seemed a bit bored and sat there, bored to death. He only sized up Aphrodite and Nia with a pair of lustful eyes, and only withdrew his lustful gaze after being glared at by Han Shuo a few times. Let's go. We're going out for a bit. Han Shuo said to Trunks and Gilbert after Odysseus and the other five left. Where are we going? Trunks was a bit puzzled and asked. The current situation in the Valley of Sunshine is complicated. Our original target was Florida, but now that Ferguson has joined the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, I think it'll be hard for us to make a move in the near future. I think we need to talk to Loriton about Ferguson's arrival last night. We can also obtain more information through Loriton to decide what we should do next. Han Shuo said calmly. The group was quite familiar with the road to the Cairo Mercenary Band this time, and didn't run into any obstacles along the way. However, before Han Shuo and the other two had even passed through the enormous square, they heard an earth-shattering explosion from the depths of the Cairo Mercenary Band. When Han Shuo and the other two arrived, they discovered that one of the buildings had collapsed. Black smoke was rising from within, and several badly mangled corpses were scattered around the collapsed building. Bald Loriton was like an enraged wild beast, his entire body brimming with an extremely dangerous aura. He was standing around the building and growling lowly at the people around him, showing signs of going berserk at any moment. Harris was standing not far away from Loriton, his expression also dark, and he looked to be in an extremely bad mood. When he saw Han Shuo and the other two walk over, he wasn't as polite as he usually was. He looked at the corpses on the ground with some annoyance and seemed to be blaming himself. It looks like we've come at the wrong time. Han Shuo curled his lips when they arrived. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Loriton took a few deep breaths and turned to Harris. Bury these brothers properly. I will definitely find out who did this and tear them to pieces. Harris didn't say much and nodded painfully. He then directed the mercenaries that had gathered from all directions to carefully lift the dismembered corpses and start cleaning up the scene. Come with me. Loriton's face was gloomy as he snorted softly and walked towards the largest building he lived in. It was very obvious that Han Shuo and the other two had coincidentally come across an attack on the Cairo Mercenary Band. However, Han Shuo and the other two didn't find any traces of the enemy when they looked around. They didn't know what had happened. When they entered Loriton's large house, he waved his hand for Han Shuo and the other two to find a stone bench to sit on. He said with a dark face, "The enemy wanted to kill me. The room that exploded is where I handle the daily affairs of the Cairo Mercenary Band. Under normal circumstances, I would have gone there at noon. However, I was delayed by something today. When I was 10 meters away from the door of the room, a strong mana fluctuation came from inside the room, and a violent explosion immediately occurred. It seems that there was a magic device set up beforehand. Otherwise, it wouldn't have exploded in such a timely manner. I almost died inside. There must be people from other powers in your Cairo Mercenary Band. Otherwise, this kind of thing wouldn't have happened. Also, when I was fighting Florida in front of the Valley of Sunshine last time, Andy of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band arrived in time to save him just as I was about to kill him. At that time, there were only people from your Cairo Mercenary Band at the fence. Logically speaking, the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band wouldn't have been able to arrive in time to save Florida from my hands. I had my suspicions at that time, but it looks like my suspicions weren't unfounded. Han Shuo thought for a moment and said, "That's for sure. I can arrange my people and other powers, so other powers can naturally do the same. It's just that it was too dangerous this time and I almost died. I don't know which power did it." Loriton's face was dark as he growled angrily. Seeing that Loriton knew what he was doing, Han Shuo didn't say anything else. He inwardly thought that Loriton looked like he had all brawn and brains, but his thoughts were actually so meticulous. No wonder he could replace the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band and sit in the position of first in the Valley of Sunshine. Florida's grandfather, the Light Grand Magus Ferguson of the Church of Light, has arrived. I don't know where Florida has been moved to, and I can't find a suitable opportunity to make a move. I've come to find you this time because I want to know where Florida has been arranged to be. Since you've also arranged for your people in the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, I think you might know about this. If I don't know where Florida is, I have no way of making a move, so I need you to tell me. Han Shua thought for a moment and said to Loriton, I already know about what happened last night, but since that old fox Ferguson has arrived, I think it's too unrealistic for you to assassinate Florida. After your attack last night, Florida will surely be protected even more carefully. Even if you know where Florida is, you may not have the opportunity to make a move. Loriton's expression had completely returned to normal by now as he looked at Han Shua and said directly. Han Shua understood that Loriton wasn't lying. However, now that the three Een demons had taken form and there was also the Earth Elite zombie that could burrow underground, Han Shua had every reason to believe that as long as he could find the hiding place of a heavily injured person, Han Shua believed that he would have a chance to succeed no matter how heavily protected the person was. I understand everything you've said, but if you know where Florida is, I still hope that you can tell me. Han Shua smiled confidently. Loriton obviously felt that Han Shua had overestimated his own abilities this time. Although he understood that Han Shua's strength was extraordinary, he felt that even if Han Shua used the Cairo Mercenary Band's strength, he still wouldn't have the chance to assassinate Florida in the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band's headquarters. All right, I'll keep an eye out. If I have news of Florida, I'll send someone to inform you. Loriton's expression was a bit impatient as he said with a cold face. At this point, Han Shua knew that there was nothing more to say. He nodded and left with Gilbert. What the hell? We're helping him and his attitude is still so bad. Gilbert started cursing as soon as he left the Cairo Mercenary Band's territory. If you were almost blown to death, I think your attitude would be even worse than his. It looks like Loriton was truly frightened today. Trunks looked at Gilbert and smiled. Loriton is in a bad mood. I don't know if he'll be unable to control himself and make a move in a short period of time. Han Shua chuckled and paused. Han Shua then said sinisterly, It looks like the Valley of Sunshine is starting to fall into chaos. I think we should change our plans now. I've thought carefully and have a better idea. Chapter 224. What should we do? Trunks asked. The waters of the Valley of Sunshine are too muddy, and our power is too weak. We can't contend with either side. No matter what the final result is, we won't be in control of the Valley of Sunshine. At the end of the day, it's all because the mercenary band is too weak. It doesn't seem wise for us to get involved at this time. We can temporarily set aside our grudge with Florida and take the opportunity to recruit and expand our power while they fight until their heads bleed. The most important thing right now is to strengthen our own strength and not join forces with them. The shop I need is an inauspicious place. No matter who holds power in the Valley of Sunshine, they won't know how to use it and will leave it empty. I'll find a way to get it back sooner or later. There's no need to trap us in a place like this because of this shop. Not to mention that Loriton isn't a good person. Our safety won't be guaranteed if we stay in the Valley of Sunshine at this time. If Loriton isn't in a good mood, he might turn against us. It won't be so easy for us to leave the Valley of Sunshine then. Han Shua responded calmly after careful consideration. You mean that we should leave the Valley of Sunshine for now? Han Shua's words were complicated, but to put it simply, it was to sit on top of the mountain and reap the spoils later. Trunks roughly grasped Han Shua's, meaning after hearing Han Shua's explanation. We can leave the Valley of Sunshine, but we don't need to leave the Valley of Sunshine's sphere of influence. We can learn from the other three powers and first develop our power on the outskirts of the Valley of Sunshine. With the gold coins and your connections, you can take the opportunity to recruit more mercenaries and slowly strengthen your mercenary band while the other four powers fight amongst themselves. In addition, I need to leave for a while. If I'm discovered by the Church of Light, it may bring some unnecessary trouble to me and the mercenary band. I'll take advantage of this opportunity to help you go to the Dark Forest and have the dwarves forge a batch of the weapons we need. We'll then see if we can get another batch of good stuff through the forest troll. When Han Shuo thought about it seriously, his mind was very active. He calmly calculated the follow-up course of action and slowly explained to Trunks. When Han Shuo finished, Trunks nodded with a smile. There are still a few months until the battle for the succession in the Valley of Sunshine. Our mercenary band has a large amount of gold coins as a foundation, so I can take the opportunity to recruit more experts. Perhaps this will be of some use when the time comes. Let's go back and discuss with Emily and Phoebe. We need to leave the Valley of Sunshine as soon as possible. Han Shuo looked at the sky, planning to leave the Valley of Sunshine as soon as possible in order to make preparations for the upcoming matters. On the way back to the shop, there were many people on the busy street. All kinds of strange items were placed outside by the merchants of various countries, attracting the attention of the passing merchants. There were muscular orcs with dense fur covering their skin, beautiful elves with sharp ears, and other strange races. They all lingered on the street, looking at the special items around them, trying to find a business opportunity that would bring them great profits. As he weaved through the crowd, Han Shuo suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of danger. It was as if there was an enemy watching him from the shadows, a faint killing intent locking onto him, ready to give him a fatal blow at any time. Being in the bloodlust realm, Han Shuo had a terrifying ability to sense others' killing intent towards him. Even in the bustling merchant street, he could still clearly sense the hidden killing intent. This was truly incredible. With a thought, the three demons flew out without a trace, like drifting air. They slowly spread out and circled around Han Shuo's blind spots, observing any places where danger might appear. With the help of the demons, not a single corner could escape Han Shuo's prying eyes. At this moment, Han Shuo imprinted everything within a dozen meters into his mind. Han Shuo quickly identified each and every person, trying to find the source of the danger. On the wall of a shop on the left, in a blind spot that was difficult for the naked eye to see, a beautiful face with impeccable features leapt into Han Shuo's line of sight. Female elven archer Maxine's eyes were like the edge of a sword, glinting with a cold light. She held an oddly shaped bow in her left hand, seeming to be waiting for the most opportune moment to give him a fatal blow. Thunder Archmage Asa stood shoulder to shoulder with her, his expression cold and dark. He held a magic staff in his right hand and was also ready, as if he could strike at any moment. However, there were many merchants from all over the world around the three of them on this street that had a large flow of people. If one wanted to carry out an assassination in such a place, one's grasp of timing had to be impeccable. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to succeed. A cold smile suddenly appeared on his face as Han Shuo continued walking without a change in expression. The three demons kept an eye on Maxine and Ace's movements, secretly thinking of a plan to deal with them. At the corner of a street, Han Shuo's body, which had been moving forward, suddenly flashed inside. Trunks and Gilbert also disappeared without a trace at the same time. Maxine and Asa looked at Han Shuo's group walk straight ahead, only to disappear around a corner. They looked at each other and were slightly startled. Their originally hidden bodies couldn't help but join the flow of people, attempting to find out what had happened at that strange corner. Where are they? Asa looked around the corner when he arrived, but didn't find any traces of Han Shuo's group. He couldn't help but exclaim softly with a frown. At this moment, a low whistle suddenly sounded as a dark, cold light suddenly appeared in the noisy street. It moved in a miraculous curve, avoiding the endless stream of people. It was like a slithering snake, quickly baring its savage fangs in the darkness and biting towards the two. The sudden turn of events shattered the two's expectations. Maxine's slender eyes narrowed into a straight line as she abruptly shot towards the rooftops when the demon's lair edge was about to shoot towards her chest, fleeing into the distance without a care for anything else. A ghastly howl sounded from Ace's mouth behind Maxine. The noisy street was thrown into chaos by this howl, and the more cowardly merchants all covered their heads as they scurried away. They didn't know what danger was about to befall them, so they immediately ran away. The various mercenaries that followed the merchants and were responsible for their safety first surrounded their employers before paying attention to their surroundings. Thunder Archmage Ace's right hand had been chopped off from the crook of his arm due to Maxine's departure. Blood gushed out like a fountain, splattering everywhere. The Demon's Lair Edge had chopped off a section of Ace's right hand and sent it flying high into the air. It spun in the air and once again turned around in an attempt to reap Ace's life. Asa was a qualified mercenary after all. He was able to maintain a cool head even in the most panicked of moments. Asa didn't hesitate in this moment where he could lose his life at any second. His empty left hand quickly picked up his right hand that had fallen to the ground after being chopped off. He used the levitation spell without hesitation and immediately flew into the air. At the same time, a circle of lightning instantly formed around his body, turning him into a man of electricity. The Demon's Lair Edge once again flew towards Asa, crackling with electricity. Before the Demon's Lair Edge could reach Ace's body, it was invaded by the fierce electricity and slowed down its piercing speed. When the Demon's Lair Edge reached Ace's back, a series of crackling sounds could be heard from Ace's body. The electrical net that had wrapped around Ace's body had invaded the Demon's Lair Edge with a strong electric energy, causing the magical yuan Han Shuo had poured into it to become chaotic. In the end, the Demon's Lair Edge's speed was slowed down and it stabbed towards Han Shuo's back, but didn't take Ace's life. Although Asa hadn't been stabbed to death, the rampaging magical yuan within the Demon's Lair Edge had violently churned about, causing Ace's back to feel as if he'd been struck by a heavy boulder. His fluttering body was like a kite with a broken string, swaying violently and almost falling down. Finally, he staggered all the way to a room and landed, crying for help as soon as he entered. Let's go. Ace's injuries are even worse than Florida's. I think it's becoming more and more unrealistic for the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band to win against the Cairo Mercenary Band this time. Han Shuo chuckled coldly as he walked out of an alley with Gilbert and Trunks. Treacherous master, why didn't you take the opportunity to kill him? Asa would have died without a doubt if he'd just stabbed him again. Gilbert looked at Han Shuo in puzzlement and asked in confusion. The place where Asa landed is the resting area of the Cairo Mercenary Band. No matter how fierce the battle between the Cairo Mercenary Band and the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band is, anyone in Tanai under the glorious sun will be protected by the Cairo Mercenary Band. Whether the mercenaries are willing or not, they have to help Asa. We can't kill Asa inside, or we'll definitely offend Loriton. Trunks explained to Gilbert. When I ambushed Asa, the surrounding Cairo Mercenary Band members didn't say a word, and no one stepped out to help them from afar. This is already making things easier for us. You stupid dragon, use your brain more. Don't just think of some dirty thoughts all day long. Han Shuo lectured Gilbert, hating that Gilbert didn't live up to his expectations. It's a pity that we let that Maxine escape. That woman's vigilance is quite high. Trunks said regretfully. Nodding, Han Shuo said in agreement, it's a bit of a pity that she escaped. Perhaps it's because she's also skilled in the way of assassination that she's so vigilant. That woman hiding in the shadows is much more of a threat than Asa. You must be careful in the future and don't let her find an opportunity to take advantage of. The three talked as they returned to the path of the shop. The three demons had been placed in the surroundings along the way, and no one could escape Han Shuo's observation. They didn't meet any more danger. An orc shop had a few exotic flowers and grasses in front of it, as well as some intricate little trees. One of the plants had 3 golden leaves and milky white roots that were as hard as stalactites. It sparkled with a faint white luster and attracted Han Shuo's attention. Han Shuo had discovered this shop through the demons. After a moment's observation, Han Shuo said to the two, "Come, let's take a look at this shop." Trunks and Gilbert were already used to Han Shuo's strange behavior. They were used to Han Shuo's mysteriousness and didn't ask any questions. They followed Han Shuo to the orc shop in the distance. When they arrived in front of the shop, some exotic flowers and grasses attracted Han Shuo's attention. Some of the flowers and grasses had a refreshing fragrance, while others had strange shapes and colors. Many of the little trees had crystal-clear roots that looked like pieces of beautiful jade. He didn't know how they grew. Han Shuo moved closer to the 3 golden leaves and placed his nose close to them. An alluring fragrance seeped into Han Shuo's mouth and nose, making him feel relaxed and happy. Han Shuo stared at the veins of the 3 dazzling golden leaves for a while, then reached out with his hand and closed his eyes to touch the stalactite. His brow creased tightly as he slowly considered something. Gilbert and Trunks looked at Han Shuo with strange expressions. They didn't understand Han Shuo's behavior and why he would be interested in these strange flowers and grasses. After a while, Han Shuo's eyebrows suddenly twitched as his pair of deep eyes were replaced by an expression of ecstasy. He then carefully examined all the strange flowers and plants in front of the door with even greater enthusiasm. His entire person seemed to be indescribably excited, as if he'd suddenly picked up some sort of treasure. Gilbert and Trunks looked at each other, not knowing what Han Shuo had discovered. They looked at Han Shuo's strange behavior in a daze, feeling a little baffled. After sweeping his eyes over the strange plants in front of the shop, Han Shuo took a deep breath and said to Gilbert and Trunks, "I need these special plants. Let's go and see if there are any greater rewards inside." Han Shuo's excited expression slowly returned to normal after he finished speaking, and he walked inside with large strides. Chapter 225. The shop owner was a tall and strong old beast man. Even in the cold winter, this old beast man only wore thin clothes, and his coarse skin covered his lush body. He rested lazily in the shop. There were many kinds of strange flowers and plants placed everywhere in the shop. Each of these strange flowers and plants had a different color, and the shop was filled with a refreshing fragrance. After Han Shuo walked in, he just glanced at the old beast man and continued to wander among the flowers and plants. He carefully identified these strange flowers and plants, looking for what he needed. In Chu Kanglin's memory, there was a paragraph related to alchemy. It was obtained after Chu Kanglin killed a cultivator who was an alchemist and took his alchemy technique for himself. There was a period of time when Chu Kanglin spent a lot of time studying alchemy techniques. Chu Kanglin even refined a few furnaces of alchemy pills by himself according to the alchemy technique. However, in addition to the alchemy furnace and alchemy technique, the most important thing in alchemy was the materials needed. The more precious the elixir, the rarer the materials needed. Many of them were spiritual objects between heaven and earth. If one wanted to refine the elixir, they must first have enough materials. In the world that Han Shuo originally lived in, all the famous mountains and rivers had gradually become tourist attractions because of the serious pollution. Some precious medicinal herbs had long been mined out. Even with Chu Kanglin's remarkable ability to fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, it took him a year or two to collect the materials for a furnace of energy-gathering pill. It was precisely because of the scarcity of materials and the fact that Chu Kanglin was not a very patient person that he finally gave up using elixir to enhance his strength. However, the memory of alchemy was still deeply imprinted in the depths of his memory. This time, the plant with golden leaves and stalactite-like roots in front of the old beastman's shop attracted Han Shuo's attention. After Han Shuo carefully examined it and carefully looked at the strange plant according to the method in his memory, he finally confirmed that this strange plant only grew in caves with natural stalactites. It absorbed the stone marrow inside for hundreds of years and gathered the yin qi of heaven and earth to form the golden marrow grass. The golden marrow grass was cold in nature and was a natural treasure of the great yin. Together with some other spiritual objects, it could be used to refine the nirvana pill, which could expand the bones and meridians of a mortal. The body would undergo an earth-shattering transformation, becoming a body suitable for cultivation. There was also a small tree that was bright red like a ruby. It was full of vermilion fruits. The bright red fruits were round and crystal clear. Under the illumination of the sunlight, they shone with a faint red light, like a few miniature suns that were dazzling. When Han Shuo carefully examined them, he confirmed that they were actually fire attribute treasures, the blazing fruit. Cultivators who practiced fire attribute cultivation methods, or devil cultivators, could directly consume this blazing fruit, and used their own methods to channel the enormous power of the sun, greatly improving their cultivation in a short period of time. However, if one did not practice fire attribute cultivation methods and consumed the blazing fruit by mistake, they would not be able to withstand the fire power contained within it. They would be burned by the power of the blazing fruit, and when they turned into charcoal, the spirit power of the blazing fruit would slowly dissipate between heaven and earth. Apart from the golden marrowgrass and the blazing fruit, this shop also had dragonfly fruit, 100-year vine heart, extreme frostgrass, and other rare items. They were all precious materials that some pill refiners needed. When Han Shuo discovered these treasures, he naturally wasn't willing to let them go so easily. After a while, Han Shuo arranged all the rare spirit herbs that he recognized in this shop neatly and placed them in front of the old orc's counter. He said with a smile, "Old man, how much do these things cost?" The old orc had been sitting there lazily and had long since seen Han Shuo's actions. He had been observing Han Shuo closely and only stood up unhurriedly when Han Shuo finally placed all the items in front of him. Contrary to Han Shuo's expectations, the tall, strong old orc did not immediately respond to Han Shuo's question about the price of these herbs. Instead, he looked at Han Shuo with some interest and asked Han Shuo in response, "You recognize these things and know what they're used for?" The old orc's voice was hoarse and thick, and sounded a bit awkward when he spoke the human language. His two large nostrils snorted as he spoke, making him look a bit odd. I just thought it was a bit odd and wanted to buy it to study," Han Shuo responded with a smile. The old orc was a bit disappointed when he heard that Han Shuo didn't recognize them either. He said to himself with some self-deprecation, "I knew it. So many pill refiners don't recognize them. How would you know what these things are?" Pointing at the blazing fruit, the old orc explained to Han Shuo, "Curious human lad, these things aren't fun. These strange poisonous herbs grow in the barren lands of our home, and no one dares to play with them. For example, this red fruit. Even some ferocious wild beasts will be burned to death if they mistakenly eat this red fruit. Also, if you put your hand on the branches and leaves of these strange little flowers, you'll feel a bone-piercing chill. Whoever eats them will be frozen into a block of ice." You're not a pill refiner, so it's best if you don't try to mix them carelessly. According to what I know, even some pill refiners have suffered terrible injuries when mixing them. The old orc obviously didn't know the wondrous uses of these natural treasures and instead thought of them as terrifying poisonous herbs. The blazing fruit and extreme frost grass were treasures of extreme heat and cold. Ordinary people would indeed be harmed if they took them, because ordinary people would definitely not be able to digest the spirit power within. It was normal for him to have this kind of misunderstanding. Chuckling lightly, Han Shuo said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'm not using these things carelessly. It's just that I know a pretty good pill refiner, and he's quite accomplished with some strange herbs. I'm just giving them to others. Of course, I'll remember your reminder and tell them the characteristics of these poisonous herbs." All right then, it was quite difficult for my children to bring these herbs from the faraway barren lands. You can give me 100 gold coins for all of these items. This is a very fair price, and there are some pill refiners who are very interested and willing to pay a large price for them. The old orc obviously didn't know what it meant for these items to fall into the hands of a knowledgeable person like Han Shuo. 100 gold coins wasn't even enough to buy a single leaf from one of the herbs. On account of the old orc's kind reminder earlier, plus the possibility that these herbs might be delivered to him in the future, Han Shuo generously threw down 500 gold coins and said, "Many thanks to the old man for your reminder. Your kind reminder is worth 400 gold coins. Otherwise, my friend may have run into great trouble. If you have more of these herbs, feel free to bring them over from the barren lands. I'll be sure to pay a large price for them when I have the time." "Oh, esteemed guest, your generosity will definitely be rewarded. Thank you very much." The old orc excitedly accepted a bag of 500 gold coins. His gaze when he looked at Han Shuo was completely different as he happily praised him. Wait a moment. Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from outside the door. Then, a beautiful woman that even Han Shuo and the other two couldn't help but sigh in admiration walked in leisurely. Her tall and slender body was wrapped in a light purple dress. Her long brown hair flowed down like a waterfall, and below her slender phoenix eyebrows were a pair of limpid eyes. Further down was a delicate nose, small crimson-red lips, tender and smooth skin, and an oval face. All of these were the elements that a beautiful woman should have. She looked to be only in her early 20s, but her entire being exuded the air of someone who held great power and had experienced great things. Although she didn't purposefully reveal it, her entire being naturally exuded a disdainful aura, as if she could easily decide the life and death of others. "Hi, beautiful, are you talking to me?" After a loud whistle, Dark Dragon Gilbert looked at the woman excitedly and said lightly, "Not you." She flicked a glance at Gilbert and responded faintly. She didn't look at Gilbert again and walked directly towards Han Shuo. When she arrived in front of Han Shuo, she extended a slender finger and pointed at the extreme frost grass. Her limpid eyes looked at Han Shuo and said, "Can you give this poisonous grass to me?" Shaking his head, Han Shuo smiled faintly and said, "I'm sorry, I can't." After being deflated, the beautiful woman looked at Han Shuo with a dumbfounded expression, as if she hadn't thought that Han Shuo would refuse so straightforwardly. Her phoenix eyebrows furrowed beautifully and she opened her mouth again. "I can pay 100 gold coins for this poisonous grass." Shaking his head again, Han Shuo also smiled faintly and still firmly refused. "I'm sorry, I'm not selling." After being deflated twice, she clearly knew that she wouldn't be able to obtain this extreme frost grass. She looked deeply at Han Shuo and said disdainfully, "A man with no poise." It looks like Emily's words weren't all that detailed. When these words were spoken, it was Han Shuo's turn to be stunned. He stared closely at the woman and asked tentatively, "Your mistress Cecilia?" Nodding her head with a cold expression, Cecilia raised her head to look at Han Shuo and said with a haughty expression, "That's me. May I ask, Mr. Brian, what will it take for you to give this poisonous grass to me?" "I won't give it to you no matter what," Han Shuo responded, then said with a smile, "It's very nice to meet you, Mistress Cecilia. Goodbye." When these words were spoken, Han Shuo didn't look at Cecilia again and walked around her, directly walking out of the shop. Chapter 226. Honorable Master, I don't think this is your style. Why are you suddenly so cold to a beauty? On the way back, Gilbert had a puzzled expression. First of all, I have a use for that poisonous grass, so I definitely won't give it to her. In addition, this Cecilia thinks that her position is higher than mine, so she's swaggering around in front of me. This kind of attitude really disgusts me, so she can forget about getting the poisonous grass from my hands. According to Emily, Cecilia was a priest, and she also majored in pharmaceutics. Her attainments in pharmaceutics were extremely high. Although she wasn't the main combatant in battle, an expert like Cecilia, who majored in both, could play a crucial role. Such a character could allow warriors and mages in battle to quickly recover their physical strength. Even if they were injured, they could use some priest's magic and some potions to quickly treat them, so that the warriors' and mages' injuries could be stabilized, so that they could join the battlefield faster. After leaving the old orc's shop, Han Shuo didn't continue to stay outside, and went straight back to his base camp. Phoebe and Emily sat lazily on two wide chairs in the middle of the courtyard as they bathed in the crimson glow of the evening sun. They were happily chatting about something. As soon as Han Shuo walked into the courtyard, the two women's four eyes all turned to look at Han Shuo. After going through a day, the two women's expressions were natural, without the awkwardness in the morning. Under the illumination of the red evening glow, the two charming faces were bright red, gorgeous beyond compare. Their beautiful eyes were also full of affection, like a young wife at home looking forward to the return of her husband. In an instant, Han Shuo's heart was filled with a warm emotion. In a trance, Han Shuo felt that at this moment, the two women were so beautiful. If the truth was revealed, and the two women could still live in harmony, it would be a pleasant thing for any man. "What are you thinking about?" Standing there with a silly smile. Only when facing Han Shuo would Phoebe be so easy to get close to, and her tone would be much softer. "No, nothing." beautiful wishes could only be wishful thinking for now. From Phoebe's personality, she wasn't a woman who would easily compromise. Therefore, Han Shuan naturally wouldn't reveal any clues to avoid angering her and causing trouble. Brian, I'm afraid I'll have to leave first this time. I've just received a mission with Sister Cecilia. I can't stay in the Valley of Sunshine any longer. Emily looked at Han Shuo reluctantly and said apologetically. Han Shuo was first taken aback, then fell silent. He understood that Emily, as a senior member of the Dark Mantle, had many things that she needed to do. She couldn't stay in the same place forever. Nodding, Han Shuo revealed an understanding smile and said, I understand. It's not suitable for us to stay in the Valley of Sunshine for the time being. I'm also preparing to leave. Under Phoebe and Emily's astonishment, Han Shuo repeated to Emily and Phoebe what he'd said to Trunks and the others today, weighing the pros and cons in detail. Han Shuo's decision wasn't wrong, so he quickly received the approval of Phoebe and Emily. Then, what do we do next? Phoebe's beautiful eyes focused on Han Shuo as she asked softly, You're in charge of the Buzzed Merchant Guild, so I don't think you can stay in the Valley of Sunshine forever. You can go attend to your matters first. I'll take care of some matters of my own, and then head to the capital to find you. Trunks has enough gold to support him. I think with his abilities and connections, he'll be able to better develop his forces in the outskirts of the Valley of Sunshine. All right, it looks like we'll need to split up for now. Here, this is what you need. The Valley of Sunshine is really a good place. You'll be able to find whatever resources you need as long as you have enough patience. Phoebe took out many strange ores and some rare metals from her space ring and placed them in the courtyard. She then looked at Han Shuo with a smile. These were all the basic materials that Han Shuo needed for the dwarves to forge weapons. There was also a bit that Han Shuo wanted to keep for his personal use, planning on refining a few small magical weapons when he had the time. Phoebe had already given Han Shuo the materials for refining the wood and water elite zombies. Now that all of the materials for refining the wood elite zombie had been gathered, Han Shuo could head to the Forest Troll's Holy Land after returning to the Dark Forest this time and plant the wood elite zombie in the place of extreme wood, so that the wood elite zombie could be born as soon as possible. Alright, Trunks, pay attention to Odysseus and the others. I don't know how long they'll need to consider, but I think with your familiarity with the Valley of Sunshine, you'll certainly have a way to contact them at any time. I've already told them the situation. Whether they want to join the Soul Destroyers or not is up to them. Han Shuo thought for a moment and said to Trunks, Don't worry, I know what to do. The Valley of Sunshine isn't too far from the Dark Forest. It won't be too much trouble for the two of us to contact each other, Trunks said with a smile. On the way back, Han Shuo and Trunks had already told each other about their points of contact in the Valley of Sunshine and the Dark Forest. Han Shuo didn't tell Trunks about the existence of the Cemetery of Death, but left a mark at the waterfall where he often trained to make it easier for Trunks to contact him. The group of 5 discussed the details in detail for a while before Han Shuo's group of 4 left the Valley of Sunshine under the cover of the night. With Gilbert around, the 4 didn't need to leave through the exit and left without making a sound. Only Emily had to leave with Cecilia and temporarily stay in the Valley of Sunshine for a day to pass on some things to Loriton. After leaving the Valley of Sunshine, the 4 immediately split up. According to Han Shuo's instructions, Gilbert carried Phoebe on his back and flew directly to Zajoski City. He told Phoebe to use the transportation matrix in Zajoski City to safely return to the capital of the Empire and then meet up with Han Shuo at the Cemetery of Death. After bidding farewell to Han Shuo, Trunks burrowed into the depths of the forest alone and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After the 3 left, Han Shuo swaggered in the direction of the Dark Forest, neither hurrying nor slow. He didn't even use the art of the demonic ninth heavens. Han Shuo planned on exposing his whereabouts when he left the Valley of Sunshine this time, in order to attract the attention of the Church of Lights Ferguson. This was to prevent the latter from not knowing that he had left and not letting Trunks off afterwards. On the main road leading out of the Valley of Sunshine, Han Shuo's expression was relaxed and at ease. He didn't ride any means of transportation, and his tall figure traveled alone under the bright moonlight, not the slightest bit aware that he was about to become a target. At such a crucial time, the glorious sun, Tanai, and the other four powers would certainly send people to patrol the area to prevent any accidents from happening. When Han Shuo wanted to expose himself, everything seemed very easy. Using the three Yin demons to spy on him, Han Shuo easily discovered that several groups of people were paying attention to his whereabouts. When a person hurriedly spoke a few words and quickly left with his companions, rushing in the direction of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band, Han Shuo understood that the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band would arrive before long. That Ferguson of the Church of Light would certainly drop everything at hand and eliminate the most dangerous hidden danger first. Now that Han Shuo had reached the Bloodlust realm, he had the three Yin demons monitoring everything, the Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie at his disposal, and the extraordinarily fast art of the demonic Ninth Heavens. Han Shuo was confident that he could calmly escape from any encirclement. Therefore, from beginning to end, Han Shuo appeared very relaxed. He walked unhurriedly in the direction of the dark forest, waiting for Ferguson's group to arrive, and then leisurely leave the Valley of Sunshine amidst their pursuit. He wanted them to understand that he had already left the Valley of Sunshine. It was the middle of winter, and the snow-covered mountain range presented a world of ice and snow. Under the bright moonlight, the sky didn't seem too dark even at night. The reflection of the moonlight and the snow made the silver-white world appear so quiet and beautiful. Under the moonlight, Han Shuo's lonely figure drew a long shadow on the snow-covered ground. In such a cold night, even some greedy merchants weren't willing to travel. Therefore, even on the most crowded roads, Han Shuo didn't run into a single merchant caravan. After leaving the main road, Han Shuo continued forward in the vast Kurlan mountain range. After Han Shuo had walked for more than an hour, he arrived at an even more remote forest. Through the Yin demon's surveillance, Han Shuo discovered a cruel atrocity. A small caravan of a few dozen people was being madly ravaged by ruthless bandits in the middle of the night. There weren't many bandits, only a dozen or so of them. However, each and every one of them was incomparably savage. Each and every one of them yelled wildly, ignoring the pleas of the merchants. While plundering the goods, they grinned hideously as they slaughtered the merchants. Several young women were stripped naked in the middle of the night in a world of ice and snow. They were forced onto the carriages and next to the big trees to be raped. Their helpless and painful screams made one's heart bleed. Around the caravan's carriage were several strong men dressed like mercenaries. They'd all been decapitated and their blood had dried, dyeing the ground black. It looked like they were the first wave of guards to be killed. It was obvious that this small caravan had thought that they wouldn't be targeted by bandits in the middle of the night and that they were taking a secluded path. That was why they'd taken the risk to travel at night. How could they have known that they'd misjudged and encountered a small group of bandits, resulting in such a cruel situation? Han Shuo wasn't a very kind person. He'd once commanded the forest troll to rob, but he'd never killed the innocent, nor would he commit such atrocities like raping women. As the saying went, even bandits had their own principles. Han Shuo felt that he'd done a pretty good job. However, the merchants had already offered up all their goods and knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging. But they still had their heads chopped off by the ferocious bandits. This scene was intolerable to Han Shuo. The bandits' despicable and unruly methods completely infuriated Han Shuo. Without any greetings or superfluous words, Han Shuo, who'd used the Yin demons to witness the atrocities, broke through the air. Because of his anger, his blood and chi surged wildly. A thick, murderous aura followed Han Shuo's figure and descended on the scene. The gloomy Han Shuo's eyes were blood-red. His cold face was frighteningly ferocious, and the murderous aura around him couldn't help but surge. He slashed at the neck of a bandit who was pressing down on a woman and raping her. The left palm that slashed out was as black jade, like a cold, sharp knife. With a pu sound, the bandit's head was sent flying far away. Blood sprayed everywhere from the headless neck. An extremely terrifying scream came from the mouth of the dead bandit. The woman, who'd been suffering in pain, suddenly saw that the person on top of her had been decapitated. Blood sprayed all over her from the severed neck. She couldn't help but scream. "Who are you?" How dare you meddle in our business? Don't you know that our boss is the butcher? A bearded bandit, who'd been about to kill a merchant, suddenly turned his head and roared. It was indeed Butcher Gustav's men. Of all the bandit factions in the Valley of Sunshine, only Butcher Gustav's bandits would be so cruel and unruly. There was no need to waste words with them. Han Shuo directly expressed his attitude with his actions. With a gloomy face, Han Shuo's murderous aura was terrifyingly thick. In front of these cruel bandits, he displayed the vicious side of a demonic cultivator. Han Shuo directly rushed towards this person. Before he could react, the violent Han Shuo's fist blasted down like a sharp iron awl. The bearded bandit's chest was directly pierced through by this punch. When Han Shuo pulled out his bloody fist, there was a huge bloody hole in his chest. Even his shattered internal organs could be clearly seen. Han Shuo's heart was filled with rage as he panted heavily. He was like a demon king who only knew how to kill. He used his ruthless coldness and perverse physical strength to crush the bandits one by one. With a rip of his hands, he tore a bandit in half. With a punch, the bandit's bones were all shattered and his flesh exploded. Hot blood sprayed all over Han Shuo's body. A gust of bloody whirlwind blew past, and a group of more than 10 bandits were all turned into scattered pieces of flesh. Compared to the innocent people they'd killed, their fates were even more terrible. Not a single corpse was whole. When Han Shuo discovered Ferguson and Maxine's figures through the demons, he suppressed the bloodlust in his heart and continued walking in the direction of the dark forest with heavy steps. He didn't linger a second longer in this place that reeked of blood. Chapter 227. A wide river blocked the way. The surging river water flowed all the way to the low-lying area. Han Shuo panted heavily as he stood in front of a towering ancient tree. He did his best to suppress his frenzied state of mind. His blood-red eyes were wide open as he turned his head to look at the two approaching figures. The two figures slowly approached under the bright night sky. Ferguson was carrying Maxine with magic, and they appeared in Han Shuo's line of sight like two drifting clouds. "You finally arrived. I've waited for some time." Fiendish aura churned all over his body as streaks of crimson light encircled Han Shuo's body. This was the strange energy that his body had naturally absorbed from the bandits' fear and resentment just before their deaths. Although your methods were cruel, you saved those people. This means that you're not a heartless person. I've already investigated you and know that you're not from the Calamity Church. However, some of the things you've grasped are too dangerous to this world. Therefore, I'll capture you and imprison you in the Church of Light forever. However, I won't take your life. Ferguson's body flew to the top of a tree branch as he looked at Han Shuo calmly. The elven divine archer Maxine's pretty figure landed gracefully. She knocked an arrow and took aim at Han Shuo. A sense of danger suddenly leapt into Han Shuo's heart, and he couldn't help but cast a few more glances at Maxine. The Calamity Church has nothing to do with me. Moreover, I have no way of using the knowledge I possess to transform large numbers of dark creatures. I'm telling you clearly this time, I won't join the Calamity Church, and the Calamity Church is my enemy. But if you continue to tangle with me, I don't care if your reputation is good or bad. As long as you threaten me, I won't hesitate to kill you." Suppressing the crazy thoughts in his heart, Han Shuo's expression was sinister as he spoke viciously. Ferguson shook his head and said resolutely, "I'm sorry. Not killing you is already the biggest concession I can make. I definitely can't let you go, because the things you've grasped are far too dangerous for us." It seemed like there was no way to back down. Grinning wildly, Han Shuo nodded. "Since this is the case, then there's nothing more to say. If you dare make a move, I won't be lenient." Before he lost his reason, Han Shuo suddenly soared into the air and transformed into a streak of bloody light, flying towards the dark forest. Whoosh! Maxine shot out an arrow that she'd long since prepared. It was like a bolt of lightning streaking through the air, piercing through the air with an ear-piercing whistle. The arrow followed Han Shuo like a shadow, as if it wouldn't stop until it saw blood. Grand Magus Ferguson wasn't idle either. Just as Han Shuo's body shot through the air, He waved the staff in his hand, and a beam of blinding light shot towards Han Shuo like a laser cannon. The surging energy made Han Shuo realize just how dangerous this light was. Han Shuo had been standing in the air when he felt the attack coming from behind him. His forward-charging body froze in midair as the demon's lair edge moved according to his will, flying out of his sleeve to meet Maxine's arrow. Han Shuo activated his magical yuan, and the murderous aura around his body quickly condensed on his right arm. Bloody light shot out from Han Shuo's right arm in the blink of an eye. Violent energy surged like a great river beneath his body, blasting towards the beam of light under the augmentation of magical yuan. An ear-splitting explosion rang out, accompanied by blinding white light and bloody light, intersecting beautifully in the night sky. It was as if a ball of brilliant fireworks had been released, possessing a strange, bewitching beauty. Han Shuo's figure fell straight down amidst the moving splendor. He fell into the great river with a splash and was instantly swallowed by the surging waters. Ferguson brought Maxine along with him through magic as the two hovered in the air above the place where Han Shuo had fallen. They gazed at the surging waters, not knowing what to do for the time being. After waiting in the air for a while, Han Shuo's figure had disappeared without a trace amidst the surging waters. This greatly surprised Ferguson and Maxine. Judging from the strength he displayed that day, he shouldn't have died so easily. Why hasn't he surfaced yet? It's impossible for him to not breathe for a long time. Ferguson looked around in astonishment and said with some doubt, "He might have died already, otherwise he would have left the water long ago. No one can stop breathing." Maxine was also perplexed and speculated with some uncertainty. If he's not dead, then he must have been washed downhill by the current. Come, let's go take a look downhill. After waiting for a while, Ferguson confirmed that Han Shuo was no longer here and flew towards the direction of the river with Maxine. Dark Grand Magus Edwin and the female alchemist Belinda walked out from the shadows of a large tree after Ferguson and Maxine had disappeared. "It's a good thing we were far away, otherwise that old fox Ferguson would have discovered us. It looks like that Brian must have run into big trouble," Edwin said with lingering fear. He was attacked by Ferguson and Maxine at the same time, so he must have fallen into the water. He's probably dead since he hasn't come out for so long. Belinda guessed the same thing as Maxine as she gazed at the surging waters. Shaking his head with a faint smile, Edwin said with certainty, "No, he's definitely not dead." The onlooker sees the game more clearly than the onlooker. I noticed a few details when they were exchanging blows. Although Brian's weapon also fell into the river after colliding with Maxine's arrow, its trajectory was stable. According to what you said before, his weapon should still be under his control. This means that Brian didn't faint or die after falling into the river, otherwise he wouldn't be able to control his weapon. Belinda thought back with astonishment after Edwin's words and agreed. Yes, he must still be alive. Heh. The stronger he is and the more he can protect himself, the more advantageous it is for us. As long as he's not dead, we'll have a chance to obtain him. He'll definitely appear again. We need to understand everything about him before then. We must obtain this person." Edwin cackled lowly and left with Belinda. The surging river was incomparably wide. A figure shot into the air like a sharp arrow from a place far away from where Han Shuo had fallen into the water. After ascertaining his direction in the air, he shot towards the dark forest like a bolt of lightning. Edwin's judgment had been quite accurate. The killing aura that had condensed on Han Shuo's right arm had completely blocked Ferguson's blinding beam of light when he'd faced the two's previous attacks. His body hadn't been harmed at all. He'd already used his consciousness to summon the demon's lair edge into his hand when he'd entered the river and then dashed wildly through the river, avoiding Ferguson and returning to the air. Han Shuo had originally planned on fighting Ferguson and Maxine, but Edwin had exposed himself in his eagerness to see what was going on and was discovered by one of the three demons. This caused Han Shuo to give up on the idea and take the opportunity to dive into the river and create the illusion of drowning, taking advantage of this opportunity to leave that place of trouble. With Han Shuo's current strength, he was confident that he could easily retreat with the help of the Little Skull and the Earth Elite Zombie, as well as his magical yuan and necromancy magic. Although he might not be able to defeat Ferguson and Maxine, he was confident that the two would be unable to stop him. However, Edwin and Belinda's appearance forced Han Shuo to give up on the idea of fighting. To Han Shuo, these two from the Calamity Church were just as hard to deal with. If they ambushed him while he was fighting Ferguson and Maxine, it would be a very unpleasant experience. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Han Shuo felt that there was no benefit in staying. He finally decided to temporarily avoid them and use magical yuan to leave through the river. The last time he'd gone to the Cemetery of Death with Fanny's group, it had taken more than 10 days. However, the existence of the art of the demonic ninth heavens had saved Han Shuo a great deal of time. He'd only spent a day and a night flying through the air, arriving at the Cemetery of Death on the evening of the second day. Although he'd adjusted his breathing 3 times along the way, Han Shuo had still expended a great deal of magical yuan when he arrived at the Cemetery of Death. Han Shuo had no choice but to adjust his breathing and recover again. The 3 Een demons had been placed outside the Cemetery of Death by Han Shuo to wait for Dark Dragon Gilbert. Han Shuo closed his eyes and rested for the night, recovering his spirit the next day. The Cemetery of Death was enveloped by a strong boundary, unable to feel the light of the sun or moon at any time. It was shrouded in a dark and cold environment all year round. White bones piled up all over the ground, making this place a paradise for the dead. Seeing that Gilbert still hadn't returned, Han Shuo couldn't help but take out some of the materials that Phoebe had given him and study them one by one. Apart from some of the materials that Han Shuo had asked Phoebe to collect to forge weapons for the dwarves, he also planned on refining some magical treasures with special effects. The demon infant had already taken form, and Han Shuo's magical yuan had reached the bloodlust realm. He now had the ability to refine magical treasures. This time, not only did Han Shuo want to refine the demon's lair edge, he also wanted to add some good items with special effects to it. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.